Welcome to another episode of Submission Radio. It's the 29th of March. I'm Dennis Skradov. I'm here with Kasper Ozolowski. An exciting episode of Submission Radio planned for the fans this week. Hey, Cass.
Yeah, we do. We do have a really big one. We've got 3 guests this week. We have Ben Askren return to the show. We have Ryan Bader, brand new addition to the show. Never spoken to Ryan before, so it's going to be exciting. He's got his big fight with Daniel Cormier coming up. And we have Wanderlei Silva returning for the 3rd time to Submission Radio. Lots been going on in Wanderlei's life. We want to get the lowdown. We want to see what exactly is happening with him. It's a big show. Oh, and also we've got some sexy topics that we're going to be talking about. Dennis, what are we going to be talking about this week?
Well, we're going to be breaking down the exciting Bellator and World Series of Fighting events, especially the Thiago Silva fight and obviously the Justin Gaethje fight that people are saying is one of the best fights of the year. We'll be breaking it down. Also talking about Brock Lesnar leaving MMA, our thoughts on it. We give it to you. Anderson Silva plans on maybe fighting for another 5 years. Well, we tell you what we think about that. And UFC embedded Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. They've been crazy, and we have some highlights out of those embeddeds that we want to talk about and just our overall thoughts on how it's all going.
Yeah, big show in general. There is lots to talk about. As always, guys, just some really quick housekeeping. Follow us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS, and of course, if you're checking us out on YouTube, really quick, just got to mention, we've got some really exciting techniques, some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ones actually, to be specific in our technique of the week. In case you don't know, technique of the week every Wednesday, brand new technique. I think we've got quite a few up there. We've got some Cyber ones, BJJ ones, heaps of MMA ones, some wrestling ones, so definitely check that out. If you're checking us out on YouTube right now as we speak, don't forget to comment, don't forget to like, and don't forget to subscribe. We absolutely love it. We always love chatting to our fans. We can do the same through Twitter as well. If you're listening on places like iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, etc., don't forget to give us a rating. Give us how many stars you think we're worth. And again, can't stress it enough, we love interacting with our fans. Let us know what you think, and especially drop down comments on what we talk about later on. Let us know your thoughts on Brock Lesnar, Anderson Silva, and the UFC embeddeds.
That's right, guys. And there's a lot of great stuff on the channel, youtube.com/Submission Radio AU. Check out an interview we did with Mark Coleman and go support him. The guy's going through some tough times. He talks to us about his career. Some great interviews from last week. If you didn't check them out, Felice Herrig spoke to us. We had a great interview that we really enjoyed with Jeremy Horn, and just a lot of great stuff. So make sure you guys check it out. Cass, I believe we've got our first guest on the line. I believe it's Ben Askren first.
Yes, Ben Askren first. We'll be doing Ryan Bader second. We're going to be finishing with Wanderlei Silva. So without further ado, guys, it's time for our first guest.
Our next guest will be fighting Luis Santos in the main event at One Championship, Valor of Champions, April 24th. He's a former Bellator welterweight and current One Championship welterweight champion. Ben Askren, welcome to Submission Radio. It's a pleasure to have you back on the program.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's great to be chatting to you, Ben. Now, it's been a few months since we last spoke to you, Ben, so we have some big questions. And yes, we'll talk about your opponent, Luis Santos. We'll talk about the title fight at One Championship 26 Valor of Champions. We'll even talk about what's going to happen on April 24th when it all goes down. But first, we want to know, what's the latest with you in disc golf? And are you still one of the best pound-for-pound disc golf players?
Well, it's been cold here in Wisconsin because, as you know, we're just coming out of the winter and we're far north here. And I just got my first round in yesterday, so I'm pretty excited. And I don't really have about a week and a half till I leave for Asia, and they actually don't have any disc golf in Asia, unfortunately.
Unbelievable. And you're a bit modest there, Ben. We actually had a look at your Twitter, and it looks like you got what they call a birdie. Can you tell us a little bit about
that? Yeah, just had a really good shot on the first hole, put it right next to the pin, and putted it in nice and easy.
Oh, you make it sound so easy, mate, but I don't know if the boys from Submission Radio would be able to get one, before they stop counting the strokes.
Well, I heard the courses down in Australia are pretty tough, so you guys have to go check it out someday.
Yeah, it's definitely on the to-do list.
Now, Ben, before we jump into your fight, we just want to have a chat about UFC 185. Obviously, you were in the corner of former champion Anthony Pettis. Just wondering, that whole experience having being in his corner, Anthony had a very difficult night against RDA. What was that like?
Yeah, well, I've been in Anthony's corner a lot, and that was the first one where he came up short, so it was very unfortunate. I think it was he took a hard shot in the first round, and I think that took a lot out of him, and he's kind of having trouble seeing out of the one eye. So I don't really think he fought to his full potential because he got hit so hard in that first round.
How, from a corner's perspective, how soon into the matchup did you guys know that Anthony's eye was seriously damaged and he couldn't see out of it?
Well, I guess I didn't really know until after the fight because Duke and Cutman went in the ring, and I was kind of on Anthony's back during the break.
Yep.
And so I couldn't really hear what he was saying. I could hear what Duke was saying, but I couldn't really hear what Anthony was saying. So I didn't really catch on until a little later in the fight that it was that bad.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Duke Roufus, he's gotten some slack for not stopping the fight right away when Anthony said he couldn't see. But it's not all people. What people don't understand is it's not always an easy decision to make. You know, how pissed off would have Anthony been if Duke just threw in the towel for him, didn't let him finish off the fight?
I mean, I'd say that would be unacceptable. And, you know, as someone who I'm a coach and a fighter, let me fight, right? I mean, it's not, and a lot of people want to make it out to be more than it is, but it's not a nice sport. The whole point of a mixed martial arts fight is to injure the other person to the point at which they won't continue, right? So when you know every time you step in the cage, there's a good chance you're going to get hurt, and that's part of the risk you assume as a fighter. So if I'm in there fighting, I don't care. Let me fight. And, you know, I'm going to keep fighting until I can't fight anymore. And you know, Anthony was never hurt too bad. There was a lot of ground fighting. Obviously, the eye was an issue, but Anthony kept fighting the whole time, and I don't think he wanted to quit. And I know as a fighter, if I was in there, I definitely wouldn't have wanted to quit.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ben, you tweeted a funny picture of yourself during the event outside Johny Hendricks' dressing room with the caption, "I keep knocking, but he won't let me in." Do you think the fight with Johny will ever happen?
Well, yeah, that's tough question because it's not all up to me, and sometimes when stuff's up to you, it's easy to control and you can determine. But when it's not up to you, right? When it's there's a lot of other forces that can happen, then that's where it gets to be a sticky situation. So, yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know if it'll ever happen.
Yeah, that's one of those matchups the fans will be talking about for years. Hopefully it comes together. Obviously, Johny fought on the same card. Just wondering, did you get an opportunity to see his performance against Matt Brown? And what did you think about it?
Yeah, I thought he fought a smart but not so exciting fight. I don't think he got a lot of takedowns, but he didn't do a lot with the ground and pound or trying to finish a submission of any sort. And Matt Brown doesn't have he's not a terrible wrestler, but he doesn't have a strong wrestling background, so he was easy to take down a bunch of times, and that made for a really easy night for Johny.
Now, it seems, Ben, that the UFC have been embracing you more, even mentioning your name here and there during the UFC 185 broadcast. And then, of course, there was that picture of you and Joe Silva. You guys are smiling and happy. You know, how likely is it that we will see Ben Askren in the UFC at some point, possibly in 2015? You know, it seems like the company may regret not signing you when they had the chance.
Yeah, they may regret it, but I still don't think I'll be showing up there. And the Joe Silva picture, it was just like, that was the only seat left on the bus when I got on. So I sat down and, obviously it was kind of awkward. So I made the best of a not so great situation and kind of had a laugh of it.
Yeah, let's go into that situation for a second because it seems pretty funny. You and Joe Silva sitting on a bus. What do you guys talk about? Do you break down old bar jokes? What do you guys talk about on the bus ride? Or do you just look straight, or do you guys just do the whole phone thing and just jump on the phone?
As I sat down, I said, if you're going to make a proposition to me, the answer is no.
Oh.
So I just kind of broke the ice right away, right off the bat. And then, there was a lot of banter between everyone. I was talking to Roy Nelson and his wife. They were sitting next to us, and Duke and Joe were talking. So, there was a lot of people sitting there, so it wasn't like he was the only person I had to talk to.
Yeah, that's true.
Fortunately.
He would have been upset if you're there mingling and having jokes, and he's like, God, I wish Ben was chatting to me. But let's talk about, your fight. One championship, it goes down to the Philippines, and, by the time you step in the cage on April 24th, it'll be almost 7 months since your last fight. How do you feel about such a layoff when when you have these breaks? Is there an adjustment period when you initially step into the cage on fight night?
Yeah, I think it's going to be almost 8 months. And actually, unfortunately enough, in my career, I've had a handful of these longer breaks, which it hasn't really been ideal, but that's how it's been. And so, I had 9 months between Douglas Lima and Carl Amasu. Yep. And then, when I got down my Bellator contract, and then I had the UFC negotiations and UFC negotiations, I ended up taking, how long was it? I want to say it was almost 10 months before I got back in the cage. So I've had a lot of these breaks, and I've never felt anything called ring rust, and I've been on record saying that I think it's kind of an excuse that people make when they haven't been in there a long time. And I've been competing my whole life. I stay in shape. I stay ready. I'm ready to fight, and there's no ring rust for me. There's nothing like that.
Yeah, now, Ben, you're 30 years old, which is a young man in MMA terms. But given how long some of your breaks are in between fights, is it ever a concern to you that during some of your prime years, you may not be active as other fighters, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something like, it's one of those things, like I said, I can't control it, so it's hard to get mad about it, right? If there's nothing I can do about it, like, for example, during the Lima to the Amasu break, they said they wanted to push me onto Spike TV because Bellator was making its debut on Spike, and they gave me some money. So yeah, whatever, it's cool. And then my contract with Bellator is up, and then so really from that on, it's not like I can just jump in and fight someone. I gotta figure out where I'm going, who I'm fighting for, and all that stuff. So. While it's unfortunate, it was definitely necessary gaps. And then I know ONE FC said they're really hoping for me to fight 4 times this year, so it's looking like hopefully it'll be a really busy year for me, and I'll be able to make the most out of this year.
Awesome. With ONE FC, or actually your first 12 fights in MMA career, they were in the US except for one, which was in Canada. Your last 2 fights were in Singapore and Dubai, and your next fight will obviously be in the Philippines. What is it like traveling to so many different places, and is it hard having to adjust to a new location before every fight?
I enjoy it. I enjoy the traveling a lot. I think for me, it's not a big deal. I mean, I know in wrestling we traveled to a lot more difficult places. We traveled to Russia and Ukraine when it was kind of tougher conditions than what we're dealing with. Singapore, Dubai, those are fantastic places to go. And so it hasn't really felt that different to me.
Oh, yeah, Ukraine's tough, and I'm actually from Ukraine myself originally, so I know what those cold winters are like, Ben. Now, your next opponent, Luis Santos, is an MMA veteran with over 70 fights and coming in on a 7-fight win streak. Obviously, you're the best of the best outside the UFC, but would you say he's one of your toughest and stiffest tests thus far?
Yeah, obviously, he's definitely a tough opponent. There's no doubt about that. As far as toughest, I think it's always hard to say because lots of times styles make matchups, that kind of thing. I would still go back to Douglas Lima. I think he's an outstanding fighter. He's someone I fought. Now it's been a while now, but it was April of 11 maybe, or April of 12 I fought him. And I think he's an outstanding opponent, and I think he's shown himself really well. I think I want to say 6 or 7 fights in a row he's won since then. So. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Santos is a tough test, but I think I'm going to get in there and handle business.
Handle business, love it. Well, we know, obviously, your skill set. What would you say are some of Lewis's biggest threats coming into this fight? Is there anything that you look at and you go, well, I got to look out for that?
Obviously, he's got the wild punches and kicks, so I expect him to be really wild early in the fight and throw something and just hope that it lands, because that's really his only chance. I mean, there's really the chance of him winning a 5-round tough fight against me is zero. I mean, there's no chance he's going to do that. But obviously in MMA with the craziness that it is, there's always a chance you can get the knockout. So that's what I'm expecting out of him, and I'm prepared for that.
You come from one of the premier fight camps in MMA, Roufus Sports. Just wondering, what are some of the things that you've been working on in training camp for Lewis, or has it just been business as usual for Ben Askren at the training?
I would say business as usual. For me, like I said, I don't really take a lot of time out of the gym, even when I have these big breaks. I'm always in the gym. MMA is my job, and I don't do like some MMA fighters where they take a bunch of time off and they have a training camp and they try to get back into shape. I stay in shape all the time. I stay ready all the time because I know I don't have a long time left in my career. And if I'm taking time off and then wasting time getting back into shape as opposed to just getting better all the time, then it's going to make my job a whole lot tougher. So I'm just constantly getting better, constantly working in the gym and evolving as a fighter.
And that's probably why, even though we do see big breaks between some of your fights, you do improve, a lot in between them. And obviously the last 4 have all been finishes. Ben, one of the biggest, I guess, sort of criticisms from the fans is that you were head and shoulders above the other fighters in your division at one championship. Assuming that you beat Santos on April 24th, is there anybody else that you have your eye on? And what do you think about the welterweight picture in general at one championship?
Yeah, one FC, it's one championship. It's they're a new organization. They're doing their best to sign tough talent. But yeah, I am beating everyone. But I did the same thing in Bellator, and it's my opinion that I would do the same thing anywhere. So I am head and shoulders above everyone. But I have the opinion that I'm head and shoulders above everyone. I just haven't got the chance to prove it yet.
That would look great on a T-shirt, Ben. I reckon that could be the next Ben Askren T-shirt. Now, you guys recently had an addition to Roufus Sports, obviously, with CM Punk starting training with you guys. We have to ask, what do you think of Punk's progress thus far as a fighter?
You know what? He's very disciplined. He's very dedicated, and he works really hard. So it's a pleasure having him in the gym. And obviously, he's got a long way to go because he started kind of out of nowhere, right? Mm-hmm. Being a professional wrestler, he didn't really have a background coming into mixed martial arts. So he is getting a lot better, but he's still got a ways to go.
And I'm just curious, Ben, obviously you mentioned that he didn't really come from a strong background in martial arts. How strong was his grappling when he came to you guys at Duke Roufus? Was he as strong as people were saying initially, or was he sort of at the beginner stage still in his grappling?
Well, I'd say his jiu-jitsu was the best part of his game. Mm-hmm. But that being said, it wasn't like he'd spent a long time even doing that. It was kind of something he did on the side as opposed to something he did for sport.
Yeah.
Now, we've been reading what you were saying, and you've had nothing but praise for Punk since he's been a part of your camp. However, a lot of people and fighters were obviously livid at the fact that he was signed to the UFC, as opposed to fighters like yourself or, even other people. In classic Ben Askren style, you made a few jokes on Twitter about it. What was your honest thoughts, though, when you first heard about it, and have they changed since now that you actually train together?
Well, those were my honest thoughts about it. And I think those thoughts don't really change, and that's not really a criticism of CM Punk. That was a criticism of the UFC and what they're doing. Mm. That being said, CM Punk, he had a great opportunity to do something he wanted to do, and it worked out really well for him. And now he gets to compete at something he wants to do. So for him, it's all good. But my jokes stand, and I stand behind those statements. So.
Absolutely. And just the final question on Punk. Obviously, he's scheduled to make his debut in the UFC soonish. How much longer do you think it would realistically take for Punk to be ready for his first fight in the UFC?
I think we're shooting for around a year is the goal. So, he kind of really started training in January. So I think he's looking at January 2016 that's kind of the goal, to have him in the cage and have him ready to fight.
And so just one more question on Punk before we switch topics. He recently had that amateur-style scrimmage at the gym. The fighter he faced, I believe, had at least 4 fights. What did you think of how Punk handled himself, and did you see anything that made you believe that, he will be successful when he makes his MMA debut?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't even watched that film yet. And, Craig's a 4-0 fighter from our gym. He's really tough. And, 4-0 pro, he's got a bunch of amateur fights also, so he's experienced. And, I didn't actually watch the tape, so it's hard for me to make too much out of it.
Sure.
All right, Ben. Now we're going to do something with you we like to call the tap-out round. It's a bunch of fun questions, and you answer with the first thing that comes to mind, sort of like word association, but sometimes you may have some more things to say, which is fine.
All the time.
Well, not this time, because the first question is, Ben, and this is quite an important question here. We saw you, Front Row Brian, and Chael Sonnen were hanging out at the amateur wrestling, and Sonnen had to do some push-ups over a lost bet. Can you fill us in on what the details were? What was the bet that Chael Sonnen lost?
Yeah, that actually wasn't. I didn't make the bet with him. It was someone else, and it was over It was in the semifinal match. It was Kyvan Gaston versus the kid from Duke. I can't remember his name right now, but someone thought the guy from Duke was going to win, and and they were betting on it, and he lost. He had to pay up with some push-ups.
There you go, push-ups for Sonnen. Now, we were speaking about you being head and shoulders above the rest. Speaking of head and shoulders, what's the secret to keeping the afro on point?
Well, it's actually not head and shoulders. It's Pantene Pro V hydrogen curls. It's a conditioner I've used for a long time that keeps my hair nice and soft and not nappy.
Yeah, your real rival isn't Johnny Hendricks. It's Leona Machida because he's got the Head and Shoulders contract. So I like to see shampoo versus shampoo between you two. Now, Ben, obviously you're an amazing wrestler, one of the best in MMA, if not the best. What's your favorite wrestling takedown?
Just plain and simple, single leg. I keep it real, keep it easy, and single is the best takedown in wrestling. Now, if you ask me a takedown for MMA, I would say double leg takedown. But for wrestling, real wrestling, single leg takedown.
All right. We all know the hilarious Justin Bieber roast is about to come out. If you could roast one wrestler, who would it be and why?
That is a good question. If I could roast one wrestler, who would it be?
Or it could be an MMA fighter.
Now, you know who I think would be a really funny one? And it's just because I know him so well. I think Tyron Woodley would be really funny.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that would be hilarious. Comedy Channel needs to pick that one up. Now, what's the craziest kick that you've seen from Anthony Pettis in the training room? And has he taught you the Matrix jump off the cage kick yet, Ben?
Man, I don't jump very well. So I'm more of a land creature. So, yeah, I don't do too much flying and stuff. And Anthony's always doing wild kicks. So I kind of stick to my own routine on that.
But he would have at least tried it. Well, the guys at the gym would have at least tried it a couple of times, right? He would have sneakily shown you guys the secrets to flying off the cage. You would have at least attempted it, right? How did you go in your attempt?
No, I don't even attempt that. I say that shit's not for me. And then I just go about my business.
I feel like you're playing possum, Ben. On April 24th at One Championship, we're going to see another Matrix kick, and then we'll be like, yeah, I've been drilling this in practice.
I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you.
All right. Well, on March 8th, you tweeted, he tried to take me down, so I had to make him humble and break his back. What did this innocent person do to get put in the dreaded camel clutch?
Oh, that was my brother's roommate, and he tried to double leg me. So I sprawled, got hit him on the ground, and stepped over for the quick camel clutch, and the Iron Sheik even tweeted me back on that one. I think he appreciated my technique.
Nice.
Okay, Ben, time for the tough questions. Give us the best afro out of the following options, okay? So we got a few options here for afros, and we want you to choose the best one, all right?
Okay.
Okay, so we've got Kyle from South Park. We've got the American painter, art instructor, and TV host, Bob Ross. Or we have the music sensation, Lenny Kravitz. Which one do you choose?
The only one I can really think about that group is Lenny Kravitz, so I'll pick him.
All right, Bob Ross, he is a famous, he teaches people how to paint. He's quite famous.
Well, Lenny has...
I feel like one of those Australian jokes that they like, sometimes in different countries they pick up on certain funny things from other countries, and that must be one. Because
oh, yeah, it's like a spoon in the knife.
I could not tell you who Bob Ross is.
We're going to tweet you pictures after this interview, by the way, just so you know. Yeah.
Okay.
Ben, we're going to dust this one off for you, right? The last person we asked this question was TJ Dillashaw in 2014, right? If you could fight 100 duck-sized horses or 10 horse-sized ducks, which would you choose and why?
I'd go with the second option, 10 of them, because ducks they're not that scary. I think you maybe give them a throat chop or something, they'd be done.
Throat chop.
These are duck-sized horses that you're fighting, Ben. So
they're horse-sized ducks.
Horse-sized ducks. So it's a tough one.
Chop them.
Okay, no takedowns there. Finally, give us the prediction. How are you planning on beating Luis Santos at One Championship, Valor of Champions?
Well, I'd say it's not going to be anything fancy. I'm going to do what I do everywhere else. I'm going to stare at him. I'm going to walk across the cage, and then I'm going to grab him and throw him on the ground, and I'm going to punch him a bunch of times.
All right, well, business as usual, guys. Don't forget to catch Ben on Twitter at Ben Askren. Watch him kick ass April 24th at the Valor of Champions. For more information, go to onefc.com. Ben, as always, absolute pleasure chatting to you.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, this is the Ultimate Fighter 17 winner, Kelvin Gastelum. You're listening to Submission Radio.
Our next guest will be taking on Daniel Cormier at UFC Fight Night 68. He's currently on a 4-fight win streak and is the winner of Tough 8. Arizona's own Ryan Darth Bader. Welcome to Submission Radio.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, it's a pleasure to be chatting to you, Ryan. You know, before we talk about your upcoming fight, we have to ask, what was it like fighting Phil Davis so early in the morning? I mean, it must have been like 3 a.m. when you guys fought. What was that like?
Yeah, it was a little different. It was about 3:30 a.m. You know, we didn't even go over to the venue until midnight. You know, and we tried to keep on the schedule here in Arizona, which meant, you know, Sweden is about 8 hours ahead of where I'm at right now. So I would stay up until, you know, 5, 6 a.m., go to bed, wake up at 2:30 or 3 p.m., and just try to keep, we kept that schedule the whole time, or tried to. You know, so we were going, I work out at least once a day. Once I'm there, we're there 5 days early. And so we'd go work out at 2:30 a.m. to try to get used to it. But as much as you do, it's definitely still weird going out there and fighting at 3:30 in the morning. And so, you know, I fought all different times throughout my career. You know, I fought in Australia twice, and those are usually on Sunday morning, like 11 a.m., 10 a.m. So I've done really late nights, and I've done early mornings. So, you know, it comes with the territory. I'm kind of used to it, and it kind of breaks it up a little bit.
Yeah, we really felt it as well on those Australian cards. And I imagine waking up at like 2 p.m. in the afternoon, did you feel like one of those video game nerds that like wakes up in like the afternoon, just like plays some like World of Warcraft or Grand Theft Auto, except of course you instead were training for a fight?
Yeah, I actually felt like a vampire because in Sweden there's only a certain amount of daylight there, so it got dark at like 3 p.m. You know, it got light at 8,
Wow.
9 a.m. and got dark at 3 p.m. So, you know, we were pretty much the whole week it was dark out there, and so it was kind of depressing. You're not seeing the sun, you know, especially me coming from Arizona, you know, and so it's a little different, but at the end of the day, you're there to do a job, and whatever is thrown at you, you know, you got to adapt, and once you go out there and you're standing across the cage from another guy trying to take your head off, you know, everything else kind of, you know, falls away, and you're just kind of in the moment right then and there.
Well, take us back to the moment after you won the fight, Ryan. It's like 4 or 5 in the morning. You're in Sweden. What do? There's like people outside jogging. You know, those weird ones that jog before work. There's people hosing down the street. There's like some kind of street washer going down the street. And then you guys are like, woo, we just won. What do you guys do? Do you go out and party? Do you just crash and fall asleep? What do you do?
That's the thing. You know, usually afterwards you go out, have a few beers, you know, hang out with your friends and family. This one, you know, my wife was there, and I had a couple of friends there in my cornerman, and, you know, by the time you get done with all the press and all that, it was like 6 a.m. in the morning, and by the time you get on the bus and go to your hotel, and so, you know, I was starving too, and I didn't want to wait in line in breakfast. You know, there's people up there eating on the buffet and stuff, and so we were actually leaving at like 1:30 to fly from Sweden to Prague. We're going to go to Prague for a few days. And so I went up to the hotel, looked in the fridge. All there was one beer in there, and I just drank a beer and went to bed.
Oh, wow.
Woke up. We celebrated in Prague, though, afterwards, so the next couple of days.
Well, the interview just took a turn. You have to tell us about Prague. What was that experience like?
Yeah, Prague was cool. It was in, you know, it's the middle of winter there. You know, but we had fun in Sweden, but you can't, you know, I can't do much. I'm there for a job to do in this fight. And then we didn't, you know, I didn't stay after at all. You know, went to bed, woke up, went to the airport, went to Prague. So Sweden was very cool. It was definitely different. And then we went to Prague, and it was definitely, I've never really been into Central Europe. And so everything was so old. The architecture was awesome. The food and beer was great, you know, so we had a good time there, you know, especially all guilt-free right after a fight. You know, I don't have to worry about what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, so I could pull that loose and have fun a little bit. So that was a really, really good time.
Yeah, wonderful. Nothing going straight to the hips after the fight. Now, your opponent, Daniel Cormier, was the last man to fight for the title against Jon Jones. Before we talk about him and yourself, what were your thoughts on his fight with Jon, and specifically the way Daniel fought?
You know, I thought you know, he did a good job in the first couple of rounds. You know, he put the pressure on Jones and didn't really let him use his reach. And then he started to fade a little bit and kind of let Jon kind of control the fight after that. And it kind of became like a little ego thing with Cormier at the end, just trying to go for that takedown the whole time, when I thought he could have been busier doing other stuff and maybe potentially winning that fight. But I think he kind of let it get away from him, and Jon Jones kind of controlled the fight after that. You know, the thing about Cormier, you know, as opposed to maybe like somebody like I fought last, Phil Davis. He was hard to hit. He's very awkward and all that kind of stuff. You never feel like you're ever set up to throw a punch. But Cormier, you know you can hit him. You know, he comes straight forward. You know what he's going to do. He's going to get in your face. He's going to try to bully you with that overtie, with punches, and then with his single leg in wrestling. So, you know, for me, you know, we got, after watching that title fight, you know, that's his first loss. You know, he has a taste of that. You know, and I'm going to give him another one.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, you know, his first loss, and obviously we saw Daniel Cormier be, you know, very, very emotional after fight. I mean, completely understandably. But having that first loss on his resume, do you think that changes him? Do you think that maybe, I don't know, maybe inside mentally his aura might be a little bit, not, I don't want to say shattered, but, you know, altered. Maybe he's got less confidence than previously.
Yeah, you know, it could go both ways. It could motivate you, but it also, something in the back of your head, you know, you have that, you know, going undefeated and winning all those fights, you're like, man, maybe I am unbeatable. I'm, you know, I'm this and that. And then all of a sudden you get beat and you're like, wow, you know, well, man, I really don't want to make it 2 in a row. Maybe you fight a different way or somewhat, you know, and the opposite can happen too. You're hungry. You don't want that to ever happen again, all that. So you train harder, come out harder, you know. So at the end of the day, you know, I'm expecting the best fighter in Daniel Cormier that there is, you know. You know, for me, it's a huge opportunity. I feel like there's no pressure on me. You know, I have a 4-fight win streak. I've beaten some really good guys. I'm in the top 5. He just fought for the title. You know, I'm sure the UFC wants to see him back in the title fight with Jones. They sold, you know, crap load of pay-per-views, you know, with their old fight and smack talk and all that. You know, so I feel all the pressure's on him to get back to there. And for me, I'm just going to keep riding this win streak, and I get to go out there and kind of let loose and be free in my techniques and in my fighting style. You know, just who cares what's happening? Let's get out there and mix it up. And then, you know, that's when I always fight my best.
Yeah, and you've been looking pretty good as of late. Obviously, you just mentioned before, you know, some things that Daniel does that you think you can take advantage of in the fight. Apart from those things that you mentioned, like him walking forward and him being a bit easier to hit than Phil Davis, what are some other advantages that you feel that you have in this fight against Daniel?
Well, the thing is, you know, he's been fighting a lot of guys that, you know, aren't really wrestlers. He fought Pat Cummings, yes, and he fought Jones. You know, he lost to Jones. We didn't see too much in the Cummings fight, you know, and so I think a lot of times people are just kind of surprised with that whole wrestling, and he has some different things that if you're not aware of, and if you're not in that wrestling world, and you're not thinking there much, but then Daniel Cormier gets a hold of you, and you're going for a ride, you know, and there are little things that can negate, you know, his takedowns and all that kind of stuff. It's just high level wrestling, you know, and you know, with people that don't know much about wrestling and stuff in there with Cormier, and obviously he's a very, very accomplished and very good wrestler, you know, they're going to have a tough time. So, you know, I factor that, the whole MMA wrestling part of it, with my ability, if he comes to try to wrestle me, or, you know, I can take him down also. I feel I can put my hands on him, and I feel like if I can put my hands on anybody in the division, I can knock him out. You know, so I know, you know, he's not going to be moving sporadically and running around and stuff like a Phil Davis was, you know, so where I felt like I never got set and I couldn't even begin to throw more than one punch because he was everywhere. You know, I know I'm going to hit Cormier. You know, so I just feel comfortable. I feel if he takes me down, I'll get back up. I feel like I have the ability to take him down, have the ability to land some heavy shots on him and put him away, really.
We're already excited. You know, Ryan, will you be doing anything new or specific in training to prepare for DC, like bringing in new training partners, and will you be doing your camp at your gym, Power MMA and Fitness?
Yeah, we usually bring people in, you know, that kind of emulate their partners. You know, I'll get a bunch of, you know, we have Ed Ruth. He's a 3-time national champ. He's kind of the guy that Jen Jones actually had in his camp helping him out for DC. Big, strong wrestler. You know, he's in Arizona now. They'll be using him a little bit. I'll be using different guys, the same body type, you know, and working a lot on what Cormier does as far as in the wrestling game, and obviously in stand-up and all that. But just drilling a lot of those techniques and getting that body type. You know, I have a few good guys as far as a good wrestler, like I was mentioned with Ed, and then Daniel Sarafian, he has the same exact body as Cormier, you know, and sparring him, he just goes 100% every time. They kind of emulate each other on stand-up, and so I'll just mix it up, and I'll bring in some other guys too, and have a good camp. Be prepared for a 5-rounder. I've gone through a full 5 rounds a couple of fights ago, and so I've been there before, and obviously he has too. So I feel like I have an advantage in that department too, where he kind of starts really slowing down. And my 5-rounder, with OSP, was a grinding kind of wrestling match, one of the most tiring kind of fights you can have, and I felt good in there. So I just feel confident about this fight, and I feel like I have nothing to lose. I get to go in there and prove everybody wrong.
Yeah, certainly right, Brian, and we're looking forward to seeing that fight. Now, let's go back in time just a little bit. I mean, your last loss came at the hands of Glover in 2013. Now, not even 2 years later, you're riding an impressive fight, win streak, and you're ranked number 5 in the division. I mean, that's a pretty impressive turnaround in such a short time. What do you attribute that to?
Just mental fortitude and toughness. I don't let these losses kind of get at me. I don't dwell on them. It's kind of, I've been in the sport long enough. I have 25 fights or so. This will be my 17th fight in the UFC. I hate to lose, and I'm a competitor. And at the same time, even though I hate it so much, I got to let it go and get better. So with the Glover fight, I felt like I was fighting awesome. I was, letting it go. I was a big underdog there, and that's kind of what I'm talking about as far as carrying it over into the Daniel Cormier fight. I felt like I can go out there and just be free and let some stuff fly. So I rocked him a good 2 or 3 times and made a mistake and paid for it. And then, I just went back and learned from it, tightened everything up, and just kept it rolling. So for me, it's just letting things go and kind of what we were talking about earlier too, is not letting those losses kind of eat at you or affect the way you fight the next time out. And so, for me, every fight is a new fight. 0-0 record-wise, and just going out there and fighting the guy, because all it is one night, at a certain time, whether it's 3:30 in the morning or 10 a.m., in Australia or whatnot. You're fighting that one guy at that one time, and it's whoever's the best at that one moment. It's not who he's beat or who I've beat or who I've lost to or anything like that. It's whoever can put it together at that one moment.
Well, whatever you're doing, it's definitely working, and obviously you're now riding a 4-fight win streak, heading into your fight against Daniel Cormier. Are you starting to feel the pressure knowing that you're closing in on a title shot?
No, there's pressure every single fight. When you're on a losing streak, you're worried about wanting to stay in the UFC, not losing another one. When you're winning, you're worried about climbing up to the top. And, when you just have a fight in front of you, it's just pressure enough to go out there and win. Collect your show and win money, and put a W in the column and keep climbing that ladder. And so I don't think there's ever a fight where there's not tremendous pressure. And so for me, I just kind of keep that narrow-mindedness and look at that one fight in front of me, and then you start racking them up, and it'll take care of itself. If I go out there and I beat Daniel Cormier, especially if I go out there and beat him in a convincing manner, you look at the top 5 right now. It's John Jones, Anthony Johnson fighting in May. Anthony Gustafsson just got knocked out by Anthony Johnson. Rashad is injured, and that leaves Daniel Cormier and I in the top 5. So potentially the winner of this fight could get the next title shot. But I don't really let that get to me and look ahead at all. I got a tough guy in Cormier. I focus on that. If I go out there and knock him out, I think I deserve that title shot. Knocking him out and being on a 5-fight winning streak and fighting the guys I've fought. So you never know what happens, but that's kind of my mindset going into this fight.
Yeah, that title belt would look great over at the Mantle of Power MMA. It would look good when people come into the gym. With a win over DC, there's a huge chance, like you mentioned, that you'd earn a title shot against the champ, John Jones. Obviously, for people that don't know, you last fought John Jones all the way back in February of 2011. Have you had a chance to think what you would do differently in a rematch? Obviously, you feel that you're close to a title shot.
Oh, yeah. I'm a totally different fighter than, I came into the sport just a wrestler, and that's it. I didn't really have anything else, and by getting the right people around me and everything, I've definitely grown as a fighter. And so I definitely want to get, a rematch and because I'm definitely 100% not the fighter I am. And the fighter I am today would, whoop my own ass that I was back then. So, I love the challenges. I love fighting the best guys. I've done I've done that my whole career. We never have turned down a fight. We never shied away from any kind of fight. Fighting the Rampages, Machitas, John Jones when nobody wanted to fight him, all the way through, and so same with Glover. Nobody wanted to fight Glover. They kept turning him down or getting injured. We stepped up and fought him. So that's what we do. We want to fight the best, and I want to be the best. So got to beat those guys, and who knows what happens then. They're fighting in May, him and Anthony Johnson. It could be a new champ, or it could be, Jones again. So it'd be awesome to get a shot at Jones again, and then it'd also be awesome to have some new blood in there.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just one of those things at this point where he's been so dominant. I think people are almost forgetting that, oh, wait, yeah, there is a new challenger. But just quickly going back to that night in February, things obviously went well for John Jones, and he ended up getting the title shot after your fight. Assuming you get that title shot, do you feel like you would have sort of come full circle and gotten that title shot that you originally deserved?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of is letting me know that what I'm doing, are the right things, like across the board. I was on a 2-fight losing streak. I lost to Tito, John Jones, and then to come all the way back, re-enter the top 10, beat, be on a 4-fight win streak, go through and be in the top 5, beat Daniel Cormier, and for me, knowing that I could do it that whole time when other people are doubting, that's my biggest thing. I know I can, get things done, whatever I set my mind to, and you're always going to have the people that go, I don't think so, he's not that good, or whatnot, and so that would just solidify that, knowing that I had the mental toughness and the desire and the dedication to go through that whole thing again, pick myself back up, get on win streaks, beat the guys I needed to beat to get back to a title, and I'm not old by any means, I'm 31 years old, but I've been in the sport for a while now, ever since Ultimate Fighter, and like I said, this will be my 17th fight in the UFC. There's not too many people that, have that many fights there, so for me, putting it all together, having the right people around you is what it's all about right now, and I think now's my time.
Certainly right, Ryan. Very exciting times for Ryan Bader. Just last question on John. Obviously, he's had some moments of controversy. He's a much loved, and some people don't really like him as a champion as well around the world. People have different sort of opinions of him. Just wondering, were you surprised at all when you heard about his recent drug, obviously, controversy where he tested positive for cocaine?
I don't ever judge anybody because, I've done things in my life that I'm not proud of as anybody else, and everybody I think was surprised at that. More so that it was so close to the fight, 6 weeks or 4 weeks or however long out, from the fight that it was. That was more surprising than anything. Outside of the training camps and whatnot, people are going to do whatever they're going to do, and I guarantee there's more people that are doing that kind of stuff. But that it was surprising that close to the fight, and you have a lot of responsibilities as a champ. You have a lot of people looking up to you and all that. So you got to be conscious of that. But, like I said, I don't really judge anybody because you don't know the circumstances or what's going through their head and all that kind of stuff. So, but it was definitely surprising.
Yeah, good attitude. And Ryan, we are going to round up this interview with something we call the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. It's a bit of fun. We throw a bunch of fun questions at you and you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right, you fought twice here in Australia, both wins, and you've also been here to do signings. What's your best road story from Australia?
Well, my best road story is actually not a positive one. I have a lot of positive stuff, but we were doing a little thing with Kenny Florian, and I was going. I went to Melbourne and then Brisbane, and we left our bags in there to do a signing, and somebody came and smashed out the window of the van and took our bag.
Oh,
and
shit.
I had like a nice watch in there, like a wedding gift, and then we had our passports, and Kenny Florian didn't have anything, and so we had to go to the U.S. Embassy and get all that kind of stuff. And when Dana and the UFC heard about it, they wrote us some pretty big checks of what we had all in there, from bags to, like I said, we had some cash in there, passports, a nice watch, all that kind of stuff. So, but other than that, I've had a great time in Australia. My favorite moment was when Cain Velasquez, myself, and CB Holloway, all ASU wrestling teammates, all won down there in Sydney. And we went to Bondi Beach after the next day and had a great day by the beach, drinking some beer, having fun, eating good food, and just laughing, having a good time. So that's one of my favorite memories.
Yeah, that was UFC 110. I believe you had some plane issues going into UFC 110 with CB, didn't you?
Some plane issues?
Yeah, weren't you guys stuck on the tarmac for a while or something like that?
No, not us.
Okay.
It was a long flight. Maybe we were delirious.
I have the wrong contacts at the air department. Now, if you could fight at any weight class for one fight, which weight class would it be and why? You can go any weight class that you'd like.
I would probably like to go up to heavyweight, doesn't matter like who you're fighting up there, but the whole heavyweight division, as far as you're the biggest guy, it used to be the heavyweight boxing champion was the baddest dude on the planet, so going up and testing myself against a bigger guy and seeing how that works, I've always kind of wondered that in the back of my mind, what the difference is between heavyweight and light heavyweight, and so I probably try to go up and challenge myself there.
Yeah, awesome. Now, Ryan, you've got a great nickname, Ryan Darth Bader. This is a question we've wanted to ask you for probably like at least 6 years. At any point, did you ever consider using the name Ryan Master Bader?
I actually have, and I told my coaches and our friends that I need to do it one time, before I retire. I need to throw it out there one time to see everybody's kind of face when they go. But it's one of those things where, I wonder if they're not going to take me serious or whatnot. But at the same time, I've been hearing that since I was young, and I've got a pretty good sense of humor where I don't take myself too serious. So I still plan on using it one time.
Yeah, maybe like for a Hall of Fame induction one day when you retire or something, just pull it out randomly. Speaking of your sense of Speaking of your sense of humor, me and Casper are still laughing over your Halloween costume from 2012. You've had some memorable ones. You had the drag queen, Care Bears, the Smurf costumes. I know it's very, very early and these things are pretty much top secret, but what are you cooking up for Halloween 2015? Can you give us some hints? Can you tell us what's happening?
There are no hints for that. Those costumes were literally kind of, I kind of work best at the last moment kind of deal. I procrastinate until I have to choose one. And then I go all out for I'll be up all night the night before, making sure the costume looks good. We started that in college when we had probably a couple of the wrestlers, whatever, and we'd go out there to these. It was a block party in Scottsdale, and you get to enter a group contest. You can win all sorts of stuff, and so we won it as Ninja Turtles and Care Bears. And I probably shouldn't be saying this, but the only time I've ever been arrested or whatnot, there was a fight going on. I wasn't even involved in the fight, but I was there. I was dressed as a Care Bear, with little tiny cheerleading shorts on. I was all, painted up. I had ears on, a little nose. And they told me to leave and with everybody else. And I came back because one of my friends got in a fight. And they told me, they looked at me and they go, arrest that Care Bear right there. So I got arrested and thrown in the drunk tank as a Care Bear with ears on, a nose, and all that kind of stuff. Only time I've ever been in any type of jail or anything. And I walked in there, the drunk tank, and people were like, what the hell is going on? I'm dressed as a Care Bear. And then all of a sudden, CB, as another blue Care Bear, gets thrown in at the same time, and we're freaking people out. We got released right away and all that, and no charges, but, it was a good time. So, but we'll see for this year.
I feel like the people in that, like, I know it's not jail, but I feel like the people in that drug tank, how there's gangs and cliques in prisons? You got the Mexicans and the whatevers. I feel like people would start thinking there's like some new Care Bear clique, like, hey man, they're multiplying those Care Bears.
I had to go in there because all I had was tiny shorts on. I had no shirt and no pants, and so they made me wear this like paper suit kind of deal. And so we were been drinking a little bit, and they threw us in there, and people were in there. I was like, what are you guys in here for? And they're like, oh, drinking and driving. They're like, how'd you get that suit? What are you in here for? And I go, murder. They all kind of got quiet. In there.
That's awesome. Now, speaking of good times, you were part of one of our favorite seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, Season 8 with Frank Mir and Big Nog as coaches. From Sam Kaplan getting knocked out by Tom Lawler to Vinny Magalhaes pissing on a pillow to Seaman in the sushi to Junie Browning in general, there were some crazy stories coming from that season. What was the whole experience like for you, and what was your biggest takeaway?
It was fun for me. I look back with fond memories of that whole deal. Sometimes when you were in there, you're kind of like, I want to get out of here. I can't stand it, or can't stand some of the people or whatnot. But I still have a lot of good friends, and We have a little like WhatsApp chat thing going on with a couple of guys like Vinny, me, Kyle Kingsbury, Tom Lawler, Camplin, and Efren. Still consider all those guys friends. And then we just had a great time, and everything that kind of went down in that season was pretty true to form, So we, at that time in my life, I was right out of college wrestling, and I got put into kind of the same environment I've been used to being in with my college roommates. Wrestlers are all crazy and stuff, and all we did was train and had fun. And it kind of went into that Ultimate Fighter where I got to train the whole time. I got to work out with guys like Nogueira, Anderson Silva, on a day-to-day basis, and get a short amount of fights, or get quite a amount of fights in a short amount of time. So it was a good experience for me. I wouldn't do it again at this time in my life, but back then I definitely had fun.
Absolutely. It was, as Casper said, one of the highlighted seasons for a lot of us. Now, Ryan, you've got 3 kids. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have 3 kids under 3 years old. Yeah, 3 under 3.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, any chances that you'll nickname your family, wait for it, the Bader Bunch?
The Bader Bunch. I don't know. That's pretty soft, huh?
Well, you're a dad now. We can't go for these drag queen costumes and the masturbator anymore. We got to go from a different angle. I'm just trying to think of you here, Ryan.
I know that's not bad. You maybe show up to a wrestling tournament and get the Bader Bunch coming after you. Kind of, I guess.
Look, they're intimidating. The Brady Bunch was intimidating back in the day. You have all of them together in a dark alley, and they're pissed off at you.
True.
I mean, I'd be scared.
You don't want that. They might break out and dance or something and scare the hell out of you.
Yeah, a nice lullaby to sleep. Well, speaking of guys that aren't exactly good at dance, you fought some of the best light heavyweights in the world. A look at your resume. I mean, you fought a murderer's row. Who's been your toughest fight thus far?
I would probably have to say, at the time, probably Machida, because I didn't really know what I was doing too much on my feet, and he is obviously, that's his world right there, and I didn't get a chance to try to take him down or anything like that or grapple with him, and so he was definitely just a weird guy to figure out, and he had that patience where you're kind of like, all right, nothing's happening, I'm going to go after it, and then that's when he strikes, and that's when he makes you pay, and you've seen it time and time again in a lot of his fights, and so looking back, I'd probably have to say he was the hardest guy to fight.
Now, Ryan, you've had some good beards back in your day. I don't want to lie, you've had some good ones, but I have a bit of a bone to pick with you. The big one is, why don't we see Ryan Bader really go for it? Why don't you go for the Travis Brown, the Roy Nelson, the Santa Claus length beards? Do you think this is going to be in the future for Ryan Bader? Will we see you with a decently, sized beard? You're already there most of the time, man. Why not just let it go and go? What's holding you back? What's holding you back?
I don't know. It's usually like, you ever try to grow your hair long and then you have it like halfway and you're like, man, I look like a douchebag. I gotta cut it. You just have to get through that stage. So for me, it's getting through that weird, like, this is uncomfortable, I look like a weirdo kind of stage. And so maybe it's in the cards one day. I do want to get a little longer, but I have to get through that middle weirdness.
As long as you don't have the big beard and you call yourself Master Bader, because then you're just going 2 for 2 and people will make associations and be like, man, where's this guy coming from? Now,
then you're just going too far, right?
Yeah. Just a couple of quick predictions before, and then we'll let you go, Ryan. Your training partner, CB Dollaway, is facing Michael Bisping, UFC 186. How is the other Sun Devil looking, CB Dollaway, thus far, and who do you think wins and how?
Yeah, he's looking great. CB, when he's on his game, he's one of the, I would put him beating anybody in the division, and he just has to show up mentally for that, and he's been looking awesome. I know he's been wanting a shot at Bisping for a long time, as it seems everybody else does, but he's got this fight in front of him, and Bisping's a huge name. It doesn't matter if he's coming off a loss or a win or whatnot. People know him and they're going to tune in to watch him fight, and so I think this is the fight for CB, to put him in that next level. He's coming off a fight with Machida where he felt embarrassed that, he didn't even get to really show any skills or fight, got liver kicked right away. And so I know he's hungry. He's looking awesome in the gym. His mind's right. And so, like I said, CB will give anybody problems in that division when he's on.
Finally, Ryan, the prediction that we want to find out from you now is your prediction against DC at UFC Fight Night 68. Give it to us. How do you plan on beating Daniel Cormier?
Well, I want to go out there and, I've had a couple, 4 or whatever decisions the last couple of fights. I want to go out there. I want to stop him. I want to make a statement. Go out there and knock him out and earn that next title shot.
Well, we can't wait to see it. June 6th is UFC Fight Night 68. It's in New Orleans. Ryan Bader versus Daniel Cormier. We can't wait, guys. Don't forget to follow Ryan Bader on Twitter at Ryan Bader. Ryan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. We'll do it again.
Hey, this is Alistair Overeem, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest needs very little introduction. He is a Pride and a UFC legend. He is a former Pride middleweight champion. He is a former 2003 Pride middleweight Grand Prix tournament winner. He is the axe murderer, none other than Wanderlei Silva. Wanderlei, welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you?
Very good, and I'm so happy for you guys opening this space for me to talking to my Australian fans. Thanks so much. I'm very happy.
Well, absolutely. It's been a while since we've spoken to you. First I wanted to ask you, Wanderlei, we saw that you ran into the legend Flavor Flav. Where did you run into him, and how long have you known him for?
Man, he lives in my community gate, and he's so fun. He's a really good guy, really good friend of mine.
Yeah, look, it looked like you guys had known each other for a while. Now, before we talk about the big news in your life, we just want to go back a few months, Wanderlei. You welcomed the new year in Japan and spent New Year's Eve with guys like Mirko Cro Cop and Fedor Emelianenko. What was that like for you, and how did you feel being back in Japan? Did it feel like you were back in your Pride days?
Yeah, I feel so happy because I'm Soccer Cop, I'm talking with Fedor, and you guys be a good friend. And the guys are legends, and I'm so glad to start the guys in good condition, physically, mentally, and financially. And I'm so happy for these guys having success. This success I'm scared these young guys don't gonna have the opportunity to have in the future.
Well, it was a fun event, Wanderlei, and one of the things that happened, there was a bit of a brawl between Mirko Cro Cop and Fujita, and you and Fedor basically played security and held everybody back. What was going through your mind at that moment? Was that very much a Pride moment for you?
Man, I think if somebody touched me, gonna be bad, because the guys start to fight, and I don't see what is gonna happen. I don't know what is happening.
Yeah.
I scared, man.
You scared? No way, Wanderlei. You could never be scared. Now, there were rumors that you and Phil Baroni were going to fight at the same event. Just wondering, was there any truth to that? Was that fight ever being close to actually happening?
No, not yet. No, nobody talked to me about that.
Okay, because it's obviously Phil Baroni posted that up on his Twitter a while back. Now, the event that you attended, of course, is IGF, which is run by Antonio Inoki, the pro wrestling legend and WWE Hall of Famer. The biggest rumors that were going around not too long ago were that you were going to the WWE, Wanderlei. How true is this, and have you had some kind of meeting with the people from the WWE?
No, the talking don't continue, because I'm a real fight, I can't do pro wrestling. I don't know. I never do before, and I don't know if I'm going to break the rules.
So just to clarify, Wanderlei, the offer that the WWE made for you, was it just to do a pro wrestling match against Chael Sonnen? What kind of deal did they offer you?
Yeah, like that, like a pro wrestling, and I don't know. So we want to fight against Sonnen. I wanted to do the real fight. I don't want to do pro wrestling.
Because you announced on Twitter, I believe it was a few months ago, that you got an interesting offer from the WWE. I'm just curious, how did that come about? Did somebody call you, or did you just receive an email?
Somebody contacting and asking about.
I mean, the interesting thing is, pro wrestling, it's not real. And as you mentioned, you're a real fighter. Do you think it was just too difficult for you to have to work with Chael Sonnen and pretend to fight him rather than fight him in real life?
Yeah, it's potentially can go into the wrong way.
I guess the rumors are squashed. No Wanderlei at WrestleMania, unfortunately. Now, Wanderlei, you recently tweeted out a tweet to all of your fans. You asked them to help free you. You said you were a bit of a slave to the UFC and Dana White, and for them to pass on a message to Dana White and the UFC to free Wanderlei. For the fans around Australia and New Zealand and around the world listening, can you explain that a little bit if they didn't understand what you meant by that?
Yeah, that's the problem is because I have one fight left in my contract, and I don't want to fight him for this event anymore. And these guys hold my contract, and I can't do nothing in other event. And I'm not gonna fight there. I'm not gonna fight in other event. And these guys hold my contract. I want to be free. I don't want to work for these guys anymore. And he don't sign the agreement and say you are free. And because the truth, I don't know if they're gonna fight again or not. I think no. Today they're gonna fight. No, and there's no reason for these guys holding my contract. No, he just sign a paper and it's done. But he don't do that, and I'm so bad because this is disrespectful for me. I have all my history in this sport. And I have my name. Imagine what's gonna happen with the young guys, and they don't have a name and no expression. These guys do what these guys want. No, this is bad because what happened with me can happen with any guy can sign this agreement.
I'm just curious because, thus far, Wanderlei, the only sort of interaction we've seen between you and Dana and things like that has been through Twitter. Have you actually contacted the guys? Like, have you spoken to Dana or Lorenzo or anyone at this point?
No, these guys don't talk with me, These guys don't talk with me. No say nothing. And this is so disrespectful because, one thing can make me retired because when happen all these things with the Athletic Commission, these guys don't contact me and say, hey, gonna happen this, gonna happen that. I saw what is gonna happen on the news, on the internet.
Oh, wow.
And this is so disrespectful. And I don't want to work for these guys anymore.
Well, we saw recently that you were actually going to appear at a Bellator event and not even fight, but just meet some of your fans around the area, and then you had to cancel at the last second. Was that because the UFC wouldn't let you do that because you're under contract with them?
Yeah. The guys are paying me money to sign some autographs, meeting some guys. And I received one email can say, I will be, I'll be there. The guy's gonna sue me, gonna go to the lawyer, go to the judges, and I can't work. That's the problem, That because this is make me like a slave. I can't work anymore. These guys don't pay me nothing, and I can't work in other place. That's the problem, Since these guys want to have me on contract, but we don't work in these guys say no. Okay, you're gonna work for us, but these guys no want. And that's the problem. And this can happen with any guy can have this contract. We don't have it. We don't have our name. We can't do nothing. We can't do nothing.
It's interesting that, obviously, you're not fighting for Bellator, you also can't do any appearances or anything like that, or it looks like pro wrestling matches. The other thing is, Wanderlei, you're suing the Nevada State Athletic Commission. I'm just wondering, why did you decide to sue the commission instead of the UFC, like a lot of other fighters?
No, because this commission is the most bad thing in the world. These guys catch one big star 30 days before the fight, and he can fight. I ask him, since this guys catch one new guy, the guys don't have a name. You thinking 1 month before, you think this guy can fight? No, of course not. The guys catch the other star with drugs, they don't happen nothing. Who judge this? Who tell? No, we never know. We don't know. We don't know who controls this commission. We know who controls because the guy gives an interview and say, gonna happen this, gonna happen that, and exactly what has happened. No, the promoter said in the interview going to happen. This is exactly what has happened. We know these guys control everything, but you want one commission. You need to have the rules for anyone, the same rules. You can't have one rule to the famous guys and one rule to the young guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, for the fans listening around the world, what is the situation with you and the commission currently? Are you any closer to figuring out the situation? Are you any closer to being able to, you know, fight in the future?
I'm not accepting nothing from this commission. This commissioner is nothing for me. No, this commissioner representing nothing for me. This commission lost all the credentials when the guys catch the guy 1 month before the fight, the guy fights, catch the other guys, the drug is not happen nothing. Who is this guy for judge somebody? No, this guy knows nothing. I don't respect nothing. I don't accept nothing from this commission.
With the commission, we've seen a lot of times, like, let's say recently, there was some ridiculous decisions at UFC in Rio, and, you know, according to the Brazilian commission, at least, they will stand, and that happens a lot in Nevada and pretty much all states. Are you worried at all that the commission is, you know, too powerful and that they won't change anything?
Exactly. That's the problem. These guys give the power to some guys who don't understand the sport, don't understand the reality from the fighters, you know. These guys not in fight. These guys don't know These guys don't know nothing. No, I give my name for the man. You guys wanna help? I'm here. I can help you guys to make the rules, to make everything right. But nobody contacts me. It's more easy for these guys to do what these guys want. You know, these guys gonna kill the sport, like what is happening right now. No, like last year, this event down 40%, and I'm scared what's gonna happen this year. This guy's gonna kill the sport, gonna kill all what we had a lot of years to building. This guy's gonna make it down fast.
Just wondering, obviously the commission has power over you fighting in certain places in the world, but there's other places in the world where you can fight without the commission having to approve you. If you got out of this contract with the UFC, do you foresee yourself possibly having another fight in your career?
I don't know. Fight, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight anymore. But today I'm not going to fight, no? Yeah. I feel more comfortable to be there because what these guys do with the sport is so bad.
Well, let's say everything went well, and obviously you did get released from your contract. What would you want to do next? Like you obviously say you don't want to fight, or you may not, and then you say you don't really want to get into pro wrestling. What would be your next move? Would you sort of be a Bellator ambassador, or what exactly would you want to do?
I don't know. I just don't want to be with these guys anymore. It's true. Maybe I don't want to do nothing, but I don't want to have my name with these guys anymore.
Now, you obviously are one of the people helping the young people in the MMA community, and you want everybody to get a fair deal and a good contract. Obviously, the UFC are kicking in the Reebok deal starting from July. What do you think this means for a lot of athletes? Do you think this is a negative thing for a lot of the athletes in the UFC?
Man, these guys pay some money to be part of the event, and this money don't go into the fighters. I don't know how many millions this brand pay to the event, but this money don't go into the fighters yet. The guys give you some shirts, give you some shoes, and nobody receiving nothing. Now I saw some guys lost 5, 6 sponsors. Now sponsors can pay for his just training. Now these guys don't have these sponsors anymore. Well, who gonna pay? But soon, really soon. I scare we're back to the days when the fighters into training and working. That's gonna happen. And you guys want to have the fighters fighting professional, but we are not professional. No, we don't receive the fight money. Are not professional. The sponsors are not professional. I want to see how much these guys are gonna pay for each fighter in each event.
Yeah, that's definitely the big question everybody wants to know. Wanderlei, we have to ask, somebody that you knew well and trained with for many years is Wanderlei Silva. He's been in a bit of trouble recently and been in the news for his failed drug test. I'm just curious, what was your reaction when you heard the news?
Against who?
Anderson Silva.
Yeah. I feel bad because he's a great champion. He's a great fighter. And it's not his fault. This is this commission fault. Because the commission accepts one guy with some illegal things in the body fighting with the other clean guy because the other guy have just marijuana. Marijuana is not an anabolic, And these guys catch him 1 month before. In 1 month, usually the result is a 2-3 days. This guy having 1 week before, after the guys, this guy gonna suspend this guy. Why? I asking you, why this commission 1 month before accept this guy fight against the other guy? Why? And this commission wants to judge somebody. This commission don't know nothing about this sport.
And obviously there was the other situation where Jon Jones tested positive for cocaine before his fight as well. Was that a questionable situation to you as well, Wanderlei?
No, I think what the guy is wrong. You do drugs. He's wrong. No, everybody know. But what the guy do in his private life is his life. Nobody. And this is other fault for the commission because now the guy is making the bad image to the great champion, and the guy say, no, we make the test, but it's not gonna happen nothing. And this is bad, man. You catch the guy, you need to judge him and say, hey, you're making the foul, you do this, you do that, to make an example to anyone. But the commission will do nothing because the guy is a big star. And maybe have to happen the same thing with the guy, the new guy. How do you guys think it's gonna happen?
Yeah. Well, another situation was Hector Lombard. His fight got cancelled when he was caught for taking illegal substances, PEDs, and no one notified him of what happened till after the fight was cancelled. He was in the dark and didn't really know what was happening. Do you think that the commission needs to tighten up and at least let fighters know what's happening before it breaks out in the news, or at least let them know what's happening so that they know what's going on with their careers?
These guys need to have the same rule to anyone. No have rules. Each different guy is a different rules. That's the problem. The guys don't have the same rules to anyone. That's the problem.
And with, in terms of like what people are calling the drug problem in MMA, you've got guys like, say, Jon Jones popping for cocaine, Hector Lombard being caught, Anderson Silva, you got John Fitch. Do you think that MMA has a drug problem, and is it worse now than ever, or has it always been there due to, the testing?
No, this is the problem. I think there's too much pressure on the fighters. The guys need to win because you don't win. The guy's gonna cut you. The guy's gonna sue you. The guy's gonna go to the judge. The guy's gonna suspend you. Yeah, this is too much pressure. And the guys try to do everything to win. The problem is the commission and the event. That's the problem. Because the fighters, and every time we do the same, every time we fighting good, we're fighting hard, but there's too much pressure on the fighters. Too much pressure for everybody. These guys not making money. These guys have a lot of injuries. These guys don't have time to his life. And these guys, and everybody wants these guys to fight like a professional. This is impossible.
I've just got one more question, Wanderlei, about Anderson Silva before we jumped and talked about your career. Just with Anderson, he admitted that he took some substances in order to help recover and heal his leg. Do you think that was the right thing to do, and do you think that he should have waited longer before returning?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. Now, Wanderlei, we let the fans know that you're coming on the show. We've got a couple of fan questions here for you. One is from a username Pride Rules. He says, Wanderlei, one dream fight fans never got to see is you versus Fedor and Pride. Was there any opportunities ever presented for you two to fight? And what was your relationship like with Fedor back in those days?
That's why I think the prize rule is the best rule, because we can do the real fight, and the truth, I don't have nothing in my mind about that.
Sure.
Okay, another question is the MMA professor. Everyone is buzzing about your fellow shootbox member Chris Cyborg possibly fighting Ronda Rousey. There's a lot of speculation, but who do you think would win between Cyborg and Rousey, and why?
I think Ronda is a really good fighter, but I think she don't pass the first round against Cyborg.
She doesn't last the first round?
No, never.
Oh, wonderful, because obviously her trainer said that he thinks her boxing would be better than Cyborg. So would you predict that Cyborg would knock Ronda Rousey out in the first round?
I think she's going to pass in the top like a truck, It's a different, she's a really good fighter, but she's never fighting nobody like Cyborg, and she can't run anymore. You want to say you are the best in the world, you need to accept the fight and fight against the best. And Cyborg is the best. I think she does pass the first round.
Well, it's definitely the fight the fans want to see. Now, Wanderlei, we're going to do what we call the Submission Radio Tap-Out round. We're just going to throw a bunch of fun questions at you, and you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. So, first one is, what are your thoughts on Krokop returning to the UFC?
Good. I think it's good for him. He's doing good. He's fighting good. And I hope he has a good condition to fight.
Wanderlei, is there still any chance that you'd consider doing a Meta Morris match against Chael Sonnen in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And who do you think wins in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu contest, you or Chael Sonnen?
No, I don't want to do Jiu-Jitsu with him.
If you could have one rematch, which one would you choose and why?
The truth, I don't want to fight anymore. This is maybe not exist.
Well, here's a different type of question. Fans are wondering this. What kind of music do you enjoy listening to now on your iPod, Wanderlei Silva? What are some of the bands that you enjoy listening to?
I like any kind of music. I think in any style, every style has one classic. I like every kind of music.
Yeah, well, I can't let you off the hook. Give me one name. Give me one name of a band that Wanderlei Silva likes to listen to.
I like hip hop. I like blues. I like jazz.
Oh,
I like
nice.
Amy Whitehouse. Amy's good.
Now, Wanderlei, now that you're not fighting, what are some hobbies that you've been dedicating more time to?
I like to be with my son. I be with my son a lot. My family and enjoy the life.
Give us your thoughts on Rafael dos Anjos' amazing performance at UFC 185. Did you watch the fight? What did you think of his performance?
He's doing great. I think he's a great professional, great champion, and I think he's going to be champion for a long time.
Well, Wanderlei, there's a lot of, I guess, mystery. Everybody wants to know what happens with, you and the Athletic Commission. For the fans listening at home, what can we expect from Wanderlei Silva in 2015?
I think the first thing I was going to be free from this contract, and after I'm going to look what's going to happen.
There you guys go, Wanderlei Silva. Hopefully gets an opportunity to meet you guys down here in Australia in the future, and you can follow Wanderlei on Twitter at WandFC, WANDFC. Wanderlei, all the best in your situation. You're a true legend in the sport, and as always, it's an absolute honor to have you on the program. Best of luck in 2015.
In double, thanks so much. Thanks so much for all the support that I have in Australia. And I hope I'm back soon to make a great tour on Australia. Maybe I'll be close to your city. Come and visit me. Thanks so much. Have a good night. Have a good day.
There you go, guys. The legend, the one and only Wanderlei Silva. Incredibly curious to see what exactly happens with him and what happens with the commission. And if we ever will see Wanderlei Silva either fight again or come back into any kind of, fighting or entertainment form, whether it's fighting, pro wrestling, whatever the case is. In any case, that concludes the segment of interviews for this episode. We had Bader, Ben Askren, and of course Wanderlei Silva. We've got a few topics to talk about. There may not have been a UFC this weekend, but it didn't mean that there weren't awesome fights and fight cards. We had obviously Bellator 135 and World Series of Fighting 19. We're just going to talk about a few fights that stood out to us on those cards. I want to start by talking about Bellator 135. Marcos Galvão versus Joe Warren. the ex-champion. You know, this was a pretty crazy fight. Dennis, what did you think of this one?
Casper, I thought the fight was really, really interesting. I actually thought Warren was going to beat Marcos. They fought previously in 2011 at Bellator 41. He had a title shot previously. I thought Warren has looked really, really good as of late. Even though he's 38 years old, I thought he was really coming into his own. I was interested because he was having trouble taking Marcos down in the fight. In the first round, he got him down initially, but really had trouble keeping him down. And then Galvo, obviously, in the second round, went for that knee bar. It was crazy. I didn't think he was going to get it, to be honest with you. Warren, I thought he was going to get a dominant position on the ground. He screamed. Big John stopped the fight. I was absolutely amazed. It was a great finish. What did you think of the fight?
Yeah, well, going into this fight, I also thought Warren was going to win. Like you said, he has been looking really good recently. He hasn't lost since 2012 to Pat Curran. And I just thought, you know, with his clinch game and his fantastic wrestling, he's going to control the pace and he's going to edge out a win. I didn't really see the fight being finished by either guy, but I thought if anything, Warren was going to do enough in terms of controlling to edge out a decision. I was surprised by not only the move used to end the fight, but the way it finished as well. So obviously you've got a rolling knee bar, which, to be honest, a lot of guys use, and they use when they're in a bad position to sort of get themselves out of trouble. I mean, when a guy's got your back and when a guy's got, obviously, both hooks in from behind, you know, a lot of guys will roll to the knee bar. I mean, Dennis and I have had it done to ourselves multiple times, you know, when we're doing, say, things like Sambo, and it's one of those things that catches you by surprise. But in this level of MMA, most guys can fight out of it, and I really expected Warren to, like, you know, it happens more often than not in fights, and guys don't usually get the finish. It usually results in a scramble. So the fact that Marcos actually got it, and the other thing I want to say is Marcos, obviously, he's got fantastic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but, you know, at this level of MMA, that doesn't always necessarily mean something. I mean, perfect example, Andre Galvao, you know, he had a short MMA career, and he didn't do that great, even though he was one of the greatest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys in the world. So I didn't necessarily expect Galvao's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game to be that big a factor. So the fact that he was actually able to finish the move, and then you've got Warren screaming, that to me was a crazy finish. That's like, it's hard to put in a highlight because obviously you need the sound there. So, you know, if you see that in a video, it might not transcend what actually happened, but to see him scream, again, in Elite MMA, you just don't see that very often. Of course, Warren was protesting, but, you know, the rules are simple. If you do scream, that counts as a verbal submission. And I've been racking my brain, you know, I swear this has happened recently, either that or I was just watching some highlights recently, but I swear this has come up in conversation recently as well, where somebody yelled out and it was counted as a submission. But yeah, those are the rules. And of course, Warren, always being the showman, was, you know, fighting it, and obviously he wasn't happy, and he got on the mic and he said some things, and, you know, I respect Warren for always trying to promote it, but, you know, Galvao, man, he was the better man, and arguably the better man in 2011. So really happy for the guy. I mean, it must be awesome to, you know, get redemption and finally get that title.
Yeah, it was his first submission win as well, believe it or not.
Wow.
So what a win to have. And again, like you mentioned, Cass, it's one of those things where, I mean, maybe Warren didn't realize if he screamed the fight was going to be over, but if you know that's what the rules are going into it, unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles when it happens. When it comes to Bellator itself, though, I liked Warren. I thought he was a bit like a Chael Sonnen of Bellator. A lot of people didn't like him. Some people did, some people didn't. But he was sort of a character, and he was someone that I saw Bellator really promoting. Him losing, even though Galvao is obviously, you know, a great fighter, I think it hurts Bellator a little bit, because I thought, hey, if Warren can win a few fights in a row here, they actually have a real Bellator athlete, someone that can call their own, someone that people care about, whether they dislike him or like him. Him losing it obviously kind of takes that away. And Galvao, while he finished in an interesting fashion, like you mentioned, he has a bit of a short MMA career. He's had some great wins. This is his first submission win. It'll take a little bit of time for Bellator to build him up.
Yeah, I agree with where you're coming from. Look, with Joe Warren, like I said before, I really respect the fact that he is very committed to promoting fights and he has a lot of trash talk. The only thing is, with Chael Sonnen, I mean, you know those people where they seem so crazy that you can't tell whether it's an act or they're legitimately crazy? I kind of found that with Chael Sonnen. He was so good with what he did. With Joe Warren, I see through it. To me, I just look at it and it's clearly manufactured. I can see Joe Warren like going home and just being a regular guy and just being a nice guy. So when I see him get on the mic, sometimes I'm a bit like, well, you're clearly being fake here, and it's very, very WWE to me. So, I mean, that would be my only knock. But I agree with what you're saying with, Galvan winning. As happy as I am for him, I think Bellator really needs these big stars, these guys that really sort of rise above everybody else in their division and make it look like, wow, could this guy go to the UFC and compete with the best? Like, at least in the UFC, like, even if the belt sort of goes around like hot potatoes, you get that feeling like, well, these guys are all elite anyway, so you don't really doubt it. But here in Bellator, a guy like Joe Warren, who many considered him one of the best, and then obviously Galvao wins. And the thing is, like, I don't know whether Galvao will be a long-term champion. We'll see. And if they fight again, it might go differently. But yeah, to me, that's a crazy finish. And just in general, that, and not only that, but the co-main event, LC Davis and Hideo Takoro, man, those two fights right there were absolutely awesome. So that's enough for me to say the Bellator 135. If you haven't watched it, definitely check it out. And of course, there's also Ryan Couture making, I believe, 5 in a row, beating Dakota Cochran in the first round, rear naked choke, and Francis Camont making his, outside of UFC debut and also getting the win.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Warren being 38 years old, he doesn't have too many years left in the tank. So I'll be interested to see what they do with him. Also, Cass, you obviously mentioned lots of fight events over the weekend. World Series of Fighting had World Series of Fighting 19. Lots of interesting things happened during the event. Twitter was abuzz with MMA fans talking about some of the finishes and the surprises that came from the event. One of the fights I wanted to talk to you about was Thiago Silva versus Matt Hamill. Obviously, Matt Hamill had to pull out last second, pretty much at the start of the event. Not exactly sure what happened to him. I don't know if you've got the info there, Cass. I wasn't able to find exactly out what was wrong with him.
Sick.
Okay, so he was sick. I mean, if you're World Series of Fighting and that happens right at the start of the event, you would be freaked out. But luckily enough, Teddy Holder decided to take up the challenge. He was fighting someone else that night, but agreed to fighting Thiago Silva. This was like on a few hours' notice. Cass, when you heard this change, did you give Teddy any shot at beating Thiago?
Well, I mean, no, and it wasn't anything against Teddy. It's just, I'll be honest with you, like, I like to check out, most of the fighters on the card. I really didn't know much about Teddy Holder. Thiago Silva, obviously, he's proven himself, and this is meant to be, his comeback show. He beat Matt Hamill, who arguably one of the best light heavyweights on the World Series of Fighting roster. So I figured if Matt Hamill is stepping away and Teddy Holder's coming in, I assumed Thiago Silva would beat him. And I mean, with Thiago Silva, obviously, he trains in one of the, in a really good camp. He trains with the Black Zillions. I definitely didn't think he'd be going out the way that he did. What did you think of the fight, Dennis?
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely crazy. Teddy really just showed what it means to go out and just take an opportunity with both hands and go for it. He just, obviously everybody knows by now he threw those crazy strikes, just went right at Thiago. I don't think Thiago expected it. I think it kind of caught him off guard how aggressive Teddy was. He did land that nice shot on Teddy that backed him up, went forward, and then Teddy, nice, staying calm, still went forward, hit him with some nice shots. When he got on the ground, what I liked about Teddy was he took his time. He got on the ground, got in that nice side control position, eventually started raining down shots, took around the back. Those shots around the back, they're just so hard to stop, and won the fight. I mean, Thiago, I don't think he did a horrible job. I think he was calm when he was rocked, and he was just trying to gain his wits, but I think Teddy did the right thing. A lot of guys in his position, you're versing a guy like Thiago Silva, someone that everybody around the world knows, and this is sort of your coming out party, you might just go crazy and just go Shane Carwin on that person and just lose all your strength, just throw as many punches as you can. Teddy really picked his shots after he got Thiago down, and for that, I think he was very, very smart, a very calculated fighter, and actually somebody that I think World Series of Fighting should really get behind. Now that he's beat Thiago, someone who World Series of Fighting was really hoping was going to be, I suppose, the poster boy for the division. It's important for him to get behind Teddy and really promote this guy, let people know who he is as a person, because not that many people really know him.
Yeah, I think that's what they were trying to do with the awkward post-fight interview, get him to chat a little bit and say some things about himself so that people can sort of find out a little bit about this guy. Because I think, honestly, to a lot of people, he was an unknown guy. Just in terms of the fight, I mean, I thought it was crazy that he went out there and showed Thiago Silva zero respect in terms of the striking. Just basically went out there, went for it, threw hard shots from the very beginning. I mean, to TKO a guy like Thiago Silva in 2 minutes in the first round, that's incredibly impressive. I mean, Thiago had, like you said, he rocked Teddy. He threw some really good leg kicks. some inside leg kicks, and you know, he wasn't exactly doing bad. And it's not like anyone really destroyed Thiago Silva previously. I mean, he went against Alexander Gustafsson, and you know, he lost, but that ended up in a decision. I think the only guy that's ever knocked out Thiago Silva is Lyoto Machida, like he said recently on our show a couple of weeks back. So, you know, this Teddy Holder just basically knocked out Thiago Silva quicker than Lyoto Machida did, which, you know, in on itself is extremely impressive. I mean, super impressed with the way Teddy handled himself. And the thing is, he fought like a guy. You know when someone steps up on short notice, but they weren't meant to fight originally, and they kind of fight in the first round and they just go for broke because they know that, look, I got to put everything in the first round because I don't have the energy to go 3 rounds. Teddy did have the energy. He was going to fight on that card anyway. So the fact that he went out there, he wasn't really looking calculated or anything like that, and really just went for it, super impressive, Teddy.
Yeah, absolutely. And now Thiago Silva obviously comes back, had a long layoff, goes through this loss against a relative nobody, with all respect to Teddy. I mean, what does this hurt Thiago in your opinion, Kaz? Do you think this hurts his chances of being in the UFC one day in the future? Do you think he can come back stronger from this? What do you think?
Well, given his past and his controversies, I think that was already a deal breaker for the UFC. So I didn't exactly see him being in the UFC in the future. I mean, they released him for a reason. They didn't release him based on his record. It's not like he had a terrible record anyway. So I think what little chance he had of coming back to the UFC now is pretty much almost all gone. And yeah, I do think it hurts him. I mean, I still think he's a good fighter. It could just be a case where he was prepared to fight a wrestler and instead he got Teddy, who was, you know, throwing bombs at him. I mean, that can really mess guys up mentally. I'm sure he didn't expect to fight a guy like Teddy. And the other thing is, obviously with Thiago, I mean, this is meant to be like a coming out party for him. This is meant to be him beating a guy like Matt Hamill, who has a name, he's already beaten, and basically get a fast track to possibly becoming the World Series of Fighting light heavyweight champion. Now, like you said, he lost to a relative nobody. So yeah, I do think he loses a lot of steam. You know, I really want to see him pick himself up again and, continue fighting, get back on the winning trail. And I mean, this isn't by any means the end of him, but through an MMA fan's eyes, yeah, he's definitely lost a lot of steam. In a sport where it's all about what have you done for me lately, and all about, you could be the greatest, and if you lose one fight, all of a sudden you suck. Yeah, I think that, to the general public, Thiago definitely lost a lot of steam.
Yeah, sure. And, we were talking to Thiago, as fans might know, a couple of weeks back, and he really seemed like that title was something that he really wanted. He really sounded quite passionate about going through and becoming champion. So, I mean, look, Thiago, if you're listening to this, I don't know if you listen to our show, get back on that horse, man. There might be a future there, but these things happen. And I guess maybe Thiago, even himself, a little part of him might have underestimated Teddy. Whatever it was, a great win for Teddy Holder, not taking anything away from him. He's definitely an exciting fighter that, I'm excited to see who they put him up with next. It's going to be interesting. Good for World Series of Fighting in that respect.
For sure. Let's talk about the next fight, the main event, Justin Gaethje versus Luis Palomino. This is a fight that many are calling one of the best fights of the year, and I'd have to agree. This is a crazy, crazy fight from the get-go. Justin Gaethje obviously coming off a win of Melvin Gillard, and people say Lewis is going to be his stiffest test yet. I mean, the way these guys went back and forth, both guys rocked multiple times in the first 2 rounds. This is insane. If they continued to go 5 rounds and we got more of what we got, I think it would have been easily the best fight of the year. But instead, we got a beautiful finish, leg kick TO, something that you don't see very often. You saw Justin. I mean, people talk about him like he's the most exciting guy, and for very good reason. Ending the second round with a rolling front kick. I mean, just an insane fight. Dennis, what did you think?
I mean, you summed it up so well, Cass. It was just so exciting. I was on Twitter, I was on social media, all over the internet, and people just couldn't stop talking about it. They were talking about the fight, how exciting it was, what a great cap-off it was for the World Series of Fighting 19 event, and they were talking about what could this guy do against the other champions? What could Justin do against the guys in the UFC? What could he do against some of the best guys in Bellator, but more so the UFC? And Ariel Helwani, who, is one of our brothers in SB Nation and does a show called the MMA Hour, he made a great point. When somebody brings up Justin's name and says, I'd like to see how he does against some of the best in the world in the UFC, that's a feather in the cap of World Series of Fighting. You could say, hey, we have this champion, and he may very well be one of the best guys in the world. Overall, I thought it was just an amazing fight. We'll see what kind of fights happen throughout the year, but certainly a candidate for Fight of the Year, and also a great, great thing for World Series of Fighting. Justin is just building his brand. If nobody really knew who Justin was before, and I'm talking about people in places like Australia, New Zealand, places that don't get World Series of Fighting, I think they'd find out about Justin now. Just a lot of great things said about this kid. He's done so much in MMA. I mean, he's not a kid, he's a great athlete, and it's just exciting. It was a great event for World Series of Fighting and a great cap-off for it. Cass, what do you think? This fight for World Series of Fighting, does it do a lot for the brand?
Yeah, I mean, great point made by Errol Helwani. Yeah, you're right. When people say, or he's right, when people say they'd like to see someone in the UFC, that's a huge, huge compliment. And obviously, they've found lightning in a bottle. They've got a great fighter, and I think they really need to hold on to him because he is one of the most, if not the most exciting fighters in the whole brand. And it's like, you look at, say, Joe Warren and Galval, like, I don't think anyone's really comparing those guys to the fighters in the UFC. So the fact that people are saying that about Justin, and in a company that's obviously far younger than a company like Bellator and, of course, the UFC, that's a huge compliment. And for now, I'd like to see Justin stay in World Series of Fighting, continue to build up that resume, you know, get an even bigger win streak going. And the thing is, like, I wouldn't want to talk about him being in the UFC just yet, because it's like, you look at a guy like Anthony Pettis, who was, you know, fantastic, amazing, Showtime kick, this and that. If he was doing that in other companies, everybody will be saying, oh, let's see Anthony Pettis in the UFC. And I mean, at the end of the day, he's not even the champion anymore, which is crazy. So I would just like to see Justin stay right where he is, and I think more than anything, World Series of Fighting needs him.
Yeah, and they're doing a really good job. I mean, World Series of Fighting didn't go head-to-head against Bellator, but both big companies had their event this weekend. And comparing both events, although Bellator had a great card and there was a lot of interesting finishes and a lot of interesting fights, I would say the World Series of Fighting really was the one who made the big impact on the MMA community this weekend. I mean, they have another great event coming up in World Series of Fighting 20. So somebody's doing something right over there, World Series of Fighting, and they need to keep doing it.
Well, even the prelims of World Series of Fighting were really exciting. There was only 2 decisions on the whole card. I mean, the last 3 fights all ended in, knockouts or TKOs. You know, you had Clifford Starks, the UFC veteran. He got a victory, arm triangle choke. Wasn't the most exciting fight, but what I'm saying is a lot of finishes, and that's what the fans like to see. So really, really good cards, really good weekend for fight fans. And, sometimes it's good to take a little bit of a break from the UFC. And, let's be honest, some of these cards have been really watered down, like last weekend, obviously, UFC Rio. So it's good to get some new blood in here and check out some of these exciting fights.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. And for fans who haven't had an opportunity to check it out, make sure if you get a chance, and I'm talking to a lot of the Aussie guys because we don't get a lot of World Series of Fighting or Bellator down here. If you get an opportunity, if you see an opportunity to watch World Series of Fighting or Bellator, absolutely check it out. There's a lot of great fighters to watch.
Now, we've got a few topics that we want to talk about as well. There's a few things. We're going to be talking about Brock Lesnar, obviously, going back to the WWE. His UFC career is over. In case you missed it, we're also going to be talking about Anderson Silva and how he plans on fighting for another 5 years. And then we're going to talk about a few things just in regards to the UFC embeddeds, Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor. We're going to try and run through it fairly quickly. So let's start with Brock Lesnar and obviously going back to the WWE. The MMA career, it's done, it's dusted. According to him, he's never going to come back. Dennis, what's your immediate reaction when you wake up, when you see on the news Brock Lesnar signs with the WWE after like months and months and possibly a year of speculation? What do you think?
Look, as an MMA fan, Cass, I am disappointed. I'm devastated. This is a guy that's done a lot for the sport. He's, for a lot of people who come from pro wrestling, he's got him over to MMA. They're always going to feel a certain way towards him. For a lot of people, he was the reason they started watching MMA. So I was devastated. How about yourself?
Yeah, I was pretty devastated as well. I mean, we used to be pro wrestling fans, really not so much at all these days. So I ran into a guy the other day. I was walking through the office and he's like, oh, did you hear about Brock Lesnar? I'm like, I know, it sucks, right? And he's like, nah, it's good. I wanted to see him back in WWE. And I was like, well, me and this guy, we're on 2 opposite sides of the fence. For WWE fans, it's great because he's a great draw. For the MMA fans, me personally, I really wanted to see what was going to happen. I really wanted to see if he could come back. You know, people talked a lot about this illness, you know, diverticulitis, and how he was fighting at 30, 40, 50, whatever, all kind of percentages. And people were saying that he was so sick that he couldn't basically fight to his potential. And I wanted to see if that was true, you know, whether he'd come back and get destroyed even worse, or whether he'd come back and, you know, look like the man who destroyed and manhandled Frank Mir and, I don't know, what was it, 2009, 2010. So for me, I think MMA, a lot of it is about those questions, that who would win and this fight, and, you know, him versus Vader, and all these question marks. And, you know, the good thing about the UFC is a lot of these question marks get answered. Perfect example, CM Punk, you know, like, I don't think that was even a hot question, and we're going to get that answer. So for me, seeing Brock Lesnar come back, that was within the realm of possibilities, and I'm very disappointed that's now not going to happen.
Yeah, and look, from another perspective, for our listeners who aren't wrestling fans, Brock Lesnar was having the run of his life in WWE after initially coming out in the WWE and returning to sort of a dumb day return and a stupid match against John Cena. The WWE did quickly realize that Lesnar just wasn't very good behind the stick like he used to be in the WWE. Or he was never that great in the WWE. He was great in MMA, but there was something about the way he spoke on the mic. It just didn't work. When he came back, it wasn't as hot as it is now. So what happened is they put him with a guy that a lot of people know, but maybe a lot of MMA fans haven't really heard of too much, a guy called Paul Heyman. And Paul Heyman was the guy who basically created ECW for a lot of those people who don't really know pro wrestling. He wasn't always the best businessman at all times. ECW did go out of business, but his strength was taking ordinary guys and ordinary wrestlers and focusing on their strengths and hiding their weaknesses. When they put him with a guy like Brock Lesnar, he went behind the stick and he started selling those fights like it was sort of the last day of his life. And a great example of that was, there's a big wrestling event happening called WrestleMania. Well, Brock Lesnar was only on once on WWE Raw, which is their weekly show. Paul Heyman was the guy who actually built up the whole match. So without Paul Heyman, I mean, arguably, maybe Brock Lesnar wouldn't be one of the white-hot favorites in pro wrestling right now. But, I mean, the thing is, for MMA fans that may not really watch pro wrestling, Brock Lesnar is really, really good at pro wrestling. His matches are very, very good. And the matches that he's had lately, I mean, they've been some of the best matches the WWE has seen in a long, long time. He's by far their biggest draw that they've seen in the last 10 years, I'd say, arguably. So the WWE made him an offer that Brock Lesnar couldn't refuse. I mean, for the wrestling fans, it's not a goodbye to Brock Lesnar. It's a hello. There's going to be a couple of years now. They're going to see Brock Lesnar at his best. He's still at his best in the pro wrestling ring. So I understand his decision. I think, Cass, you and me were Brock Lesnar MMA fans, but deep down inside, we knew there was that possibility that he would return and just not look the same like he once did. And I mean, the big thing is he had that issue with his striking not being up to the level where it needed to be. And I guess he just realized he really had to put in a lot of hours to get up to the level that he needed to be to handle these UFC heavyweights. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think the decision that he made was the smartest decision that he could have made for himself. And I definitely understand it. It's just that MMA fan inside of me is pretty devastated.
Yeah. You know, even the last few months, just the one thing that I kept thinking about in the back of my mind was, even if he does return, he's a much older guy now. Like when he debuted in the sport, he was, you know, of MMA, he was what, like early 30s, like 30, 31, 29. I think 30, 31, around about that. So now he's 37. A lot of time has passed, and it's like, you know, if he had been doing, say, like striking and training in MMA for the last 5 years, you see guys who continue to do who are, say, great wrestlers. Let's look at Phil Davis, for example. You know, his striking is functional, but it's not like he's knocking guys out left, right, and center. You know what I mean? So if you take a guy like Brock Lesnar, who really didn't have much success with his striking, I mean, he could have been training for the last 5 years, and maybe it still wouldn't have been amazing. So if he's just... And he said that he's been training for the last year, the last 12 months. And he said that something wasn't right. He said it just mentally, something wasn't there. That, to me, red flag. That's pretty much the end of the discussion right there. If something doesn't feel right, you can't do it. You can't go back to the UFC, you know, years later, after arguably the division has evolved. And, you know, you've got Alistair Overeem, who's really, he seems to have found his groove. You got Cain Velasquez. I mean, he's been injured a lot, but it's still Cain Velasquez. You know, Junior Dos Santos. You got Stipe Miocic. There's a lot of really, really hard matchups in there for Brock Lesnar. I mean, even if he returned, I would have been thinking like, dude, they've got to put him up against someone who's not as much of a threat. I don't know, like a Stefan Struve or a Gabe Gonzaga, guys that, you know, aren't really up the top of the division. So to me, it just that's one thing that sort of kept, you know, sort of flashing in the back of my mind. How's his striking going to be? And unless he's been working on it for the last 5 years, I don't think he's really going to be all that competitive. The other thing is, you know, in terms of like money, he says that Vince McMahon, obviously the chief of the WWE, he made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. And if you haven't heard, Lorenzo Fertitta spoke to Brock Lesnar just hours before he officially signed with the WWE, and he said, can we sharpen our pencil? And he apparently, allegedly, doubled the UFC's offer. Whatever they offered to Brock Lesnar, he doubled it. And it's still, I don't know if it didn't match what the WWE offered Lesnar, but Brock Lesnar still chose to go with the WWE. So it seems to me like it wasn't a case of Brock Lesnar not wanting to return. I think he just realized his limits, and he realized, look, I'm a competitive guy, but I just won't be competitive in this sport anymore. It's time to take the easy road, which is going to the WWE, which is still a hard lifestyle. But and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. It's not the easier way. It's the smarter way. There's probably no point of him coming back, just getting his ass destroyed, you know, making the UFC money, and then what? You know, possibly burning his bridge with the WWE. So I respect, you know, Lesnar's choice, or at least I understand it, but from a fan's perspective, I'm disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if him and Paul Heyman weren't the hottest commodity in pro wrestling, who knows? Maybe he would have thought differently. But, I mean, the schedule that the WWE has apparently proposed to him sees him working once every few months. He doesn't have to travel on the road 5 nights a week from town to town and wrestle. He gets probably more money than he did back in the day when he did that full time. So all of it makes sense. I guess the sad thing, in my opinion, is, you know, the UFC still hasn't found anyone who has the same drawing ability for myself like Brock Lesnar. I think there's only one Brock Lesnar out there. They've got Phil Brooks, aka CM Punk, which will be very interesting to watch. But I don't believe he's on the same level as Brock. No. Brock was huge. He was a heavyweight. He came in with a wrestling background. They have fighters like McGregor and Rousey. They're very exciting. They're draw cards. But there's just something very, very special about a Brock Lesnar fight. I can't really put it down as to what it was. It could have been the fact that he was a huge mountain of a man who was just interesting to see everything that he said, everything that he did, the weigh-ins, just his Q&As, everything that he did was just classic sort of TV. I mean, maybe that's what it was, but I just think he's just a very, very special guy, and just the UFC doesn't have anyone like him. MMA doesn't have anyone like him. And who knows when there'll be another Brock Lesnar, but to me, there's just no other Brock Lesnar out there.
I would definitely agree with you. And I was, you know, reading these articles and I was looking at all these pictures of Brock Lesnar. I was like, man, this guy is like a once-in-a-lifetime athlete. I mean, for a guy to be that big, not only that big, but that strong and that fast and agile, and you can have all those things and it still doesn't mean shit. But obviously he had that fantastic wrestling background. So when you take all those things, like at least with Brock Lesnar, you could believe that he could become a champion, and obviously he did. But with CM Punk, it's like, well, I mean, yeah, he's got a lot of fans. I think he's got like over 2 million followers on Twitter, which is like more than the UFC. So obviously a lot of people are still going to be into him, but I just feel like with Brock Lesnar, his star never faded once he left the WWE. And part of that is because he's such a mysterious guy. Like, after he left the WWE, you know, years ago in, 2004, everybody was still keeping tabs on him. And once he debuted in the UFC, it's like he picked up right where he left off. With CM Punk, I mean, he's not going to be making... We just spoke to Ben Askren, and, you know, the reports are he's going to be making his debut in, like, early 2016. And we'll see. I mean, the way the injury bug is, who knows? He may have a fight set up, and that fight might get scrapped due to injury. So, you know, we're probably not going to see CM Punk for at least a year, and he's been out of the pro wrestling business for a while. So I think with CM Punk, his star's going to fade a little bit, and they're really going to have to, you know, start promoting him and reintroduce him and remind everybody who CM Punk is. And with Brock Lesnar, he never really had that. So I agree, you know, in terms of like... And the other thing is, just quickly, with the WWE, like, just to talk about why they need him, I mean, they basically killed their pay-per-view model. You know, with the UFC, they brought out Fight Pass, and you can watch, like, classic fights and events and things like that, but you can't watch pay-per-views. With the WWE, for those who don't know, if you buy their service, I think it's called the WWE Network, it's like $10 a month, $9.95, whatever it is, you can watch all the pay-per-views. And I remember seeing the numbers between, like, a pay-per-view without Brock Lesnar and with the Brock Lesnar, it was like 30,000 difference. It was like barely any difference. So the WWE really, really, really needed Lesnar, especially, you know, after WrestleMania. So, again, completely understand why he did it. Just disappointed that we won't see him back in MMA.
Yeah, certainly right. And hey, hopefully they do some good stuff with him. Now, Cass, another superstar in the sport, Anderson Silva, was back at the headlines as of late. He's got plans to keep on fighting in MMA. What are the specifics here?
Well, the specifics are, I mean, there's nothing specific. With Anderson Silva, all you get is almost cryptic messages, but he's basically come out and said that, you know, he's waiting for this, you know, State Athletic Commission thing to sort of blow over and whatever, and they're seeing what they can do. I guess they're going to try and appeal. But he's saying that he's going to come back next year. So I think in Anderson Silva's mind, he understands, yeah, he's probably going to get the year-long suspension, and then he wants to come back next year, which to me is crazy, because I remember when I saw him break his leg and going away on the stretcher after the second Chris Weidman fight, I remember saying right there, that's him, he's done. It's game over. I thought if he lost that fight, he may possibly retire. When I saw him break his leg, and, you know, around that time, the retirement rumors were fierce anyway, I was like, dude, broken leg, see you later. He's never coming back. He came back. Then he obviously won against Nick Diaz, and then all this controversy happened. I was like, see you later. That's a career right there. So the fact that he's saying he's going to come back again, I mean, you know, I thought about it. I guess it makes sense, because he's maintaining his innocence. He's saying that, you know, he didn't do anything wrong. And I guess if you retire like that, it only makes you look even more guilty. But if you decide to come back, and people are saying that his legacy's tarnished and legacy's broken, we've asked almost every guest we've had, what do you think? Does it do damage to his legacy? And most guests are like, look, he's had a fantastic career, but yes, it does damage his legacy. And I think if he comes back, and he's saying he wants to fight for the next 5 years. Sorry, specifics. He asked me specifics. He says he wants to fight for the next 5 years, and he wants to fight about 2 or 3 times a year, which is insane. Given how old he is now, he's, you know, 40 plus, and he wants to fight till 45, 2 to 3 times a year. I mean, that's just yeah, I don't even know what to say. That's insane. What do you think, Dennis?
Well, it sort of reminds me when we had Wanderlei Silva on last year, the first appearance that he had, we asked him about his career around these Chael Sonnen issues that he had with avoiding the drug test, and he basically said, you know, he's going to keep fighting. He wants to fight Chael Sonnen. A part of me just wants to think that it's Anderson just sort of wanting to believe that that's what the case is going to be. I absolutely think that next year he will return and have another fight. I mean, I don't think he wants to go out the way that he did, like you mentioned, Cass. A lot of people say the legacy was tarnished, this and that. And look, his fight against Nick Diaz, he did not look like the same Anderson Silva, and warranted it. He had the issue with his leg coming in before it. But, I mean, I think realistically, he'll have 1 or 2 more fights. I think the UFC, as long as there won't be any more drug controversies in his future, I think the UFC will give him as many fights as he wants, especially now that we're in the new exhibition era, where they bring back these older fighters just to sort of have dream matches. But I think the Anderson Silva era is well over by now. He will have a career in the exhibition era where he'll be versing, I suppose, a lot of sort of dream fights that the UFC can make for him. I don't think they'll be throwing him with a Chris Weidman. And really, I don't really want to see him fight Chris Weidman. Throw him a few guys, maybe like Rampage Jackson or someone interesting in the division around the time next year, a couple more times. You know, he can sell some pay-per-views and show off maybe some of the skills that he's got left. But next 5 years, I really doubt it, especially with some of the animals in his division. I mean, they just keep getting better and better. I just don't see him fighting on it. Maybe it's just wishful talking from Anderson Silva. What do you think, Cass? Next 5 years, you know, give us a prediction. How many fights do you think Anderson will do?
Man, I have no idea. I've always said Anderson Silva, nothing ever surprises me about this guy. And remember before the Nick Diaz fight, and I didn't really have any crazy predictions, but I just said how just nothing would surprise me. And, you know, lo and behold, both guys pop for PEDs, and there you have it. I mean, that's probably the only thing I didn't expect. So I don't know. I mean, if he retired tomorrow and just said, I'm never coming back, it wouldn't surprise me. And then if next week he said, I'm coming back and having 60 fights, it also wouldn't surprise me. The one thing that, you know, we were talking to some of our Twitter fans about this is how I guess it's smart for him to come back in the sense that he wants to fix his legacy. So if he went out today, that's the way people remember him for, you know, the failed drug test. But if he fights for another 5 years, that's a long time to give to people, you know, to forget about that failed drug test. And he could keep fighting, you know, he could have some more dominant performances. If he continues to fight like he did for the last, however many years that we've been watching Anderson, and how, if he continues to fight as good as he used to, then I think people can forget. And if people say, look at his physique and he looks exactly the same, then I think that might squash, quite a few rumors about him possibly, juicing throughout his whole career, which is what a lot of people thought when they saw the test. At the same time, if he continues to fight at middleweight, and let's say he continues to win and he's putting on these dominant performances, sooner or later he's going to see himself going up against guys at the top of the division, like the Chris Weidmans, like Luke Rockhold, Jacare Souzas, even Gegard Mousasi, possibly even Lyoto Machida. I mean, he's already up there towards the top of the division anyway. And I think that's when things get a little bit shaky, because I don't necessarily see him beating those guys. And that's the thing. If he comes back and he fights for another 5 years and he ends up going out the case of, say, like a Chris Lieben or Sakuraba or, even Nogueira, or Fedor Emelianenko, all guys that at one point were considered to be the greatest or, at least up there. So I guess it really depends how these fights go for him. If he ends up putting on performances like he did against Nick Diaz, that may actually tarnish his career even more. But if he does come back and puts on dominant performances, then he can help make people forget about that failed drug test.
Yeah, interesting perspective. I mean, guys like Vitor Belfort and other guys had issues with PEDs. I mean, people have forgotten about some of the issues that they've had. So that's a great point made. And obviously, like you said, Cass, taking a risk if he takes, if he fights for another 5 years and damaging his legacy, if he doesn't look like the same Anderson Silva. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. But I think he put it down in the best way. You just never know what exactly is going through Anderson's mind, and you never know what he's going to do next. So tomorrow there may be a headline that says Anderson Silva retires. And I mean, he was spent such a long time talking about how his son wanted him to retire. I just wonder what happened to that whole talk. I mean, his family must still feel in a similar way that they wouldn't want to see him fighting, into his 40s, I believe, if he fights for 5 years. So an interesting story there, nevertheless.
And you know what? That's a really good point, because I think it could be a case where he does say, look, I'm going to fight for 5 years, and he fights 2 fights, and then his family gets to him too much, and he decides, look, I'm just not going to fight anymore. Let's change topics real quick. I'm going to talk about one more thing, and then we're going to basically end the show for this week. I just wanted to talk about the UFC embeddeds. The UFC 189 World Tour. You got Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo. They're going basically everywhere except for Australia. I can't believe it. Sons of bitches. Completely slighted. Terribly upset. I tweeted. I jumped on our Twitter. I tweeted Dana White. He hasn't responded, which leads me to believe that he's probably being held captive somewhere and cannot use his hands. It's the only explanation. So, still pending on whether they'll come to Australia. I'm hopeful. But in all seriousness, I just want to talk about some of the things that we've seen in the embeddeds and some of the crazy fans that we've seen the last few days in places like New York and, I believe it was Toronto, Canada. Just want to get your thoughts, Dennis, on these whole embeddeds. We're up to episode 7 thus far. Pretty crazy stuff. What are your thoughts? Do you like these embeddeds? Do you like what you've seen so far?
Well, people know that Dendy loves the embeddeds. I mean, I love a good embedded. I look forward to them. I find myself looking forward to them, jumping on YouTube like some sort of drug addict looking for his next hit, looking through all the videos, hoping that hopefully it's up there, but not where I'm looking, then eventually realizing it's not there and going back to the sad existence that I call everyday life. But no, I'm kidding. We live in a mansion and have a good life. But I mean, I love embeddeds, and they've had some great embeddeds, and they had some not great embeddeds, like when Robbie Lawler went to buy pants, and then he said Dana White was buying him the pants, which, I mean, can he get any sadder watching a guy shop for pants? Yeah, when he says that he doesn't want to pay for the pants that he bought for. But anyway, that's a story for a different episode. I mean, I was absolutely impressed with the decision to do these embeddeds. These embeddeds have hyped the fight so much. I mean, yeah. I was really looking forward to this fight, and I was sure there was going to be some embeddeds during fight week, a countdown, that whole thing. But I just think everybody is looking forward to this fight so much more after these embeddeds. I mean, Conor McGregor is just great to watch. He's great TV. He's always energetic. Reminds me of like a Michael Jordan who was always on his feet, always doing something. But Michael Jordan that could trash talk and do a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, this guy's going around. He just keeps talking. I don't know what's going on, but he just says great thing after great thing. There was this one moment actually where Jose was off doing like a photo shoot, and one of the UFC people had his belt, and then McGregor actually grabbed the belt, asked her if he could take the belt, grabbed the belt off her, and then knocked on the window where Jose was waiting with his belt. I mean, man, that's a slap in the face and a half.
Yeah.
He just keeps going and going. I mean, when I watch these embeddeds, I think something's going to happen. Like someone's going to hit the other person in the head. There's always tension. It's like Law and Order SVU in the first few minutes. You never know what's going to happen. And I mean, it's just amazing. And the other thing I like about it, Cass, and I believe you're going to talk about it a bit more in a sec about the fans, but I like to see the difference between the fans in Brazil to the fans in Boston to the fans here to the fans there, because it shows that the sport is worldwide, number one, and number two, you know, different strokes for different folks. Some people want Aldo to win, other people want McGregor to lose, and people are so passionate about it that they're just going crazy, like absolutely crazy, like someone just threw $100 bill off the top of the roof and everyone's just trying to catch it. I mean, it's just absolutely nuts. Cass, these fans, they're going crazy. What do you think of this all?
Yeah, you know, before we talk about the fans, I just want to talk a couple of the moments that I like. You know, one of them was when they were in the airplane and Conor McGregor got in the cockpit.
Oh, my
like, tell them I'm coming. The other
Oh,
part,
my God.
and when I watch these, like, my stomach's churning sometimes. You know, I feel like I'm doing ab crunches. That's how tight my stomach is, because I'm like, dude, something is going to happen. Like, when they're doing that interview on Fox Sports, and Jose's talking, and it's like anytime he spoke, Conor McGregor's saying something to him. He's like, what's he saying? Tell him I'm his daddy. Tell him to sit on my lap. And I was like, Jesus Christ. I can't believe how patient Aldo is. So, you know, like everybody knows, Conor's good value. You're going to get good TV. The other thing I find Jose Aldo to be kind of tough to market. If you're not looking at highlight reels of Jose Aldo, then, you know, I think with fans getting behind someone, they really need to get behind his personality. And I think unless you're Brazilian, you may not be able to do that as well with Aldo, because obviously he doesn't speak, you know, he doesn't really speak English. And I think these embeddeds, they really, really help. You know, I like Aldo, I always have, but when I see him here, you know, playing ping pong and seeing what he says now, you know, it really helps me understand him as a person. And, you know, he really does seem like a really great guy. And obviously he's doing his best to not let Conor McGregor get under his skin. So I think that's the thing that is really good about these embeddeds. People love backstage stuff. It's one thing to see a promo that a bunch of media guys have worked on. It's a 30-second commercial promo, and you go, yeah, cool, that probably took like 3 days to film. And it's another thing to see the fight itself, but before that, you want to see all the content you can. If you're seeing, like, you know, all this backstage stuff and, you know, Conor McGregor checking out his hotel room and, you know, Jose Aldo meeting the mayor of Vegas, people absolutely love that stuff. And the other cool thing about these embeddeds is, like, it's not even fight week. You know, most of the time when they do these embeddeds, it's fight week. It's not even fight week. And they've got these embeddeds just for the world tour. And, you know, may I just say, huge round of applause to the UFC for just in general going in the direction of UFC embeddeds. Because if you look back a few years, remember UFC Primetime? And every week you'd have a new Primetime. You'd have like 3 weeks of Primetime. And they did it for so many fights. I think the Velasquez and Lesnar fight, the GSP and Jake Shields fights. And those were cool. But I don't know, me personally, and I think a lot of people like this as well, I don't find that much time to sit in front of my TV and check stuff out. Most people watch stuff on the internet. You're either watching stuff on YouTube or you're watching stuff through streaming services like, I know, Netflix and Presto and all that other kind of stuff. So the fact that UFC provide these embeddeds on their YouTube channel, it's right there. It's 7 minutes, it's quick, and there's, you know, a new one every day. And around fight week, when everyone's just like looking for anything they can find, boom, there you go. All this backstage stuff, confrontations, people getting separated, Robbie Lawler shopping for pants, is my ass too fat, and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's great. It's really, really great to see. So just in general, huge fan of these embedders. Now, I want to quickly talk about these fans, because I was strolling through the Sherdog forums, as I do. If anyone from Sherdog is listening, we know Bisexual MMA, you know, he loves it. Big shout out to him and all the other people on Sherdog and the Underground forums. I saw some people putting up threads about, you know, like fans disrespecting Aldo and McGregor and this kind of stuff. I'm like, hello, what is this? Go in there. Our good friends at MMA Fighting, you know, they've got these press conferences here in New York, and the New York press conference, from what I saw, it's like, and I don't want to offend anyone from New York, because I love New York. I've been there. Awesome place. I actually want to live in New York. But to me, every fan was like, hey, yo, Conor McGregor, fucking this and F-bombs, Aldo. And then a whole bunch of F-bombs and this and that. You saw people calling both Aldo and McGregor, you know, little bitches. And, you know, when you knock him the fuck out and this and that. And I was like, Jesus Christ. These fans are insane. I think there was a fan in Toronto, a Brazilian guy, who just... he just went off at Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor didn't even respond. This guy went off about, who do you think you are? Why do you think you have the right to fight Aldo? You didn't fight anyone. Mendes, Lamas, Frank Edgar, these guys deserve it. And it, like, after he was done, it was just like, okay, who's next? Who's got the next question? I don't know whether security escorted this guy out, and New York, it was just like F-bombs all over the place. So I love seeing that as well, but it just goes to show, like, I don't see this that much in other fights. So it's so good to see the fans that much into this fight. And it's like, you go to New York, McGregor's not New York, and I don't really think New York has a rich history of, Irish people. I could be wrong, but it's not like they're Boston. And they certainly don't have a huge Brazilian population. So to see people like, in Canada and New York get so behind these guys and so into it, I absolutely love it, man. That's why I'm disappointed that they're not coming to Australia.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point there about Aldo. I mean, it has been very difficult from a fan's perspective to connect with this guy. And even though he's pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world, he's always been sort of lost in the shuffle. And watching these embeddeds and seeing him go through some of the stuff that he goes through, and I mean, it makes me feel like I'm back in the schoolyard in high school and there's about to be a fight and someone's just destroying me verbally. And it takes me to that place and reminds me of some of those feelings. You just can't help but connect to the guy, sort of feel where he's coming from. And although McGregor, and we love McGregor, he's must-watch TV and someone that we think is a great fighter in the UFC. And even though McGregor's doing such a good job, at the same time, inadvertently, he's actually creating a lot of Jose Aldo fans who go into that place and think, man, I feel for this guy. He is going through the ringer here, town to town, and I respect him for not trying to reach over there and, smashing Conor McGregor in the head. I mean, a normal person such as yourself, myself, any other person, going through that much day after day, city after city, and away from their family for most of it, I mean, it would be difficult not to do anything. And he's just an absolute professional and says a lot of really smart things. It was interesting to find out a bit more about his background, like you said, and how his father raised him and how he became champion now, is giving back to all these people who helped build him. I mean, I cannot wait for this fight to happen. The UFC have done an amazing job. And just with those fan Q&As, they should just change them from Q&A to fan statements. They should just let every fan go up to the microphone and be like, all right, this is what I have to say. It's not a question, but I effing hate you. I effing hate you. And Dana White, can you get me a job with the UFC? Yeah. I mean, that would save a lot more time. Yeah, that's right. Because I don't think a lot of these fans have questions. And the funny thing is, there's no fan that feels sort of indifferent to Aldo or McGregor. They either hate McGregor or they hate Aldo. They're not like, oh, yeah, both guys are okay. Yeah. No, they're there. And they're fighting for one side or another. It's almost like a crazy soccer match. And there's the Manchester United fans and there's like the Leeds fans or whoever the rivalry is with. I just feel like there's going to be a McGregor gang and an Aldo gang. And there's going to be a big guy standing in the middle of a car yard going, can you dig this? Yeah. So really, really cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be insane. I'm shattered that we're not going to be there because I think the energy on fight day is going to be absolutely insane. And just, in terms of the whole dynamic between Aldo and McGregor, man, it must be mentally just so draining. I'd say probably more on Aldo because McGregor looks like he's having a lot more fun. But it's just like, picture this. You hate someone, absolutely hate someone. You go in to fight them. They've talked so much shit about you and you likewise about them. And it's like you get on a plane, you travel for X amount of hours, you go to arena, you go to the bus, whatever, they're there, you see them at the airport, you see them, when you're doing media, radio stations, mayor, photo shoots, whatever, you see them all the time, all day, then you have to do a conference with them, people asking you stuff, and then you have to square off and do a stare down and this and that. And then you do that for 12 days? Again, you go to sleep, you go back on a plane, again, you see them every day, you do another face-off, go to sleep, another face-off. It's like a pressure cooker. I mean, they're up to episode 7 by the time. I don't know how many more they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to do 10 or 12, but by the time episode 10, apparently McGregor slapped Aldo on the back when they were on the bus or something like that, and apparently Aldo went nuts. And there's already been a few instances where they had to be separated. So if they make the whole tour, and I imagine Dana White probably said something to them like, boys, come here. I'm telling you right now, if something happens, you're both getting fined or whatever the case is. But tell you what, if they make it through this whole world tour without smashing each other in the face, I know they're both professionals, but personally, I'll be impressed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it will be amazing, and like you said, just amazing to see what goes on at these things. Very excited to see what happens. And I personally felt like the countdown shows, while they were all right, they were just a little bit becoming a little bit outdated and predictable. Always the same guy going, "Oh, here in Montreal, blah blah blah," and then blah 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 blah. It's like the same format over and over and over again, and you're like, this is predictable and I know what's going on, and it's outdated as well. You know, a lot of the time, like, I don't know about you, but I noticed like little details, like his hair's different and he already said something else in another interview. This is all old, and I just don't have as much reason to watch it. So this embedded stuff, great stuff, really, really good, and good stuff by the UFC.
And you know, just one more thing before we finish up, because it's been a pretty long episode. With the countdowns, it's like you've got narration and you've got like the whole countdown. You've got a story. They're trying to tell a story. But with the embeddeds, I mean, it's not as much production. It's just very raw. You kind of feel like you're almost there. It's like there's no guy saying, you know, Conor McGregor, blah, 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 out of his 8 contests, and this is Joe Aldo, and he's done this. It's just those guys are talking. You've got, it's not even an interview. It's just we're following Conor McGregor around, following Aldo around, following whoever's in these embeddeds, and you're just seeing what they do. Here's them training. Here's them, you know, eating breakfast, starting their car, you know. So I feel it's a little bit more honest rather than trying to shove something down my throat that, you know, like when I was watching the countdown for Junior Dos Santos and Frank Mir, and, you know, deep down I predicted Junior Dos Santos getting that KO, but, you know, they're really trying to push the fact that, you know, both guys stand a chance, and maybe Frank Mir will knock Junior out. And I was like, dude, I'm just not buying it. So I like the honesty factor about these embeddeds as well.
Yeah, they're very well put together, and you're absolutely right, Cass. Online, easy to watch, Facebook, YouTube, and 5, 6, 7 minutes long. I mean, it's a great formula. But like you mentioned, the show is running a bit late. I think it's time for us to take it home. Thanks to Ben Askren, thanks to Ryan Bader, and thank you to Wanderlei Silva, who's actually a returning guest on Submission Radio, a legend in the sport, and someone who takes out the time out of his busy schedule to talk to us about whatever's happening in his life. We really appreciate it, Wanderlei. Thank you for coming onto the show. It's been an amazing show once again, Cass.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. I think nothing else needs to be said. We will see you next week.